Hello everyone, Xeno What If here. Bring in Season 2 Part 3 of What If the Transformers Were in My Hero Academia. Link in the description of the fanfiction of this What If. Listen here YouTube. I do not own anything and this is not a scam. Chapter 5, New Allies. Windblade's hands flew up to her head as she attempted to comprehend just what was going on. 5 more humans. And to make matters worse, they all found out by accident and during a Decepticon attack. This was not good. I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe this is happening. Mina exclaimed as she skipped around in a circle with her hands up in the air. The pink girl was cackling like a madwoman as she jumped around, unable to contain her excitement at just what was going on. I was right, I was freaking right. Hee. Giant alien shapeshifting robots. Her hands flew up and clutched to her hair in disbelief. I seriously cannot believe that this actually real. Neither can I, in all honesty. Eijiro admitted. He glanced over to Izuku, Kyoka, Mei and Momo with a questioning brow. Just how long have these guys been around? Izuku rubbed the back of his head as he thought about it. Oh, well, technically, the longest any one of them has been around is for 300 years. He pointed over to Bumblebee and the teens set their sights over to him. Bumblebee over there has been in stasis on Earth for about 3 centuries. That's kinda why his vehicle mode is such an old model. 300 years, Tenya exclaimed, adjusting his glasses. That's astounding. He raised a hand to get the bot's attention. Pardon me, but are you all well versed in the fields of quantum mechanics? I mean, you are from space after all, aren't you? The Autobots all eyed one another before Jazz gave their answer. You're probably not gonna find much luck there, man. Better luck askin', Red Alert or some other science bot. Red who? Ochako asked. Wait, are there more of you guys on Earth? RC gave her a nod. Sure are. There's about 10 of us total right now, though I suppose there's technically more since the Ark's somewhere on this planet. The Ark. Denki tilted his head. What's that? In fact, just what the heck is even going on here in general? Kyoka let out a sigh and her shoulders slumped. That is a pretty long-ass story. She sent an apologetic gaze up to Windblade and bowed her head. Sorry about all this, Windblade. We honestly didn't expect for just everything to hit the fan all at once like that. However, Windblade raised a hand to the earphone jack user. No, it's fine. Honestly, considering the position you all were in, it was smart of you to bring your friends with you. She craned her head around and set her optics onto the 5 newcomers. Considering the Viacon saw them all with you already, they probably would have been targeted anyway. She stepped toward the group and crouched down to a single knee before them. But kids, I'm going to warn you now, what you've just been pulled into is something to take absolutely seriously. We're on planet Earth for several reasons, and to understand why, it's best if we take you back to our base of operations. Optimus Prime will explain everything to you there. Optimus Prime, I would assume that's the name of your leader. Tenya guessed. Correct. The Jetbot confirmed before placing a hand over her chest. Oh, and where are my manners? I'm Windblade, by the way. Jazz pointed finger guns at the teens with a smirk. Name's Jazz. Pleased to meet ya. Then, RC placed a hand to her own chest while her other one rested on Bumblebee's shoulder. And just so you know our real names, I'm RC and this is Bumblebee. She sent the 5 teens an apologetic gaze. Sorry about having to hide our identities from you, but being incognito, we had to make sure that no other humans are none the wiser. Eijiro waved his hand to her. It's no prob. We totally get it. He set his eyes up to Windblade and Jazz before jabbing his thumb to himself. I'm Eijiro Kirishima, by the way. Gotta say, it's totally mind-blowing to meet real-life aliens, who happen to be awesome robots, too. I am Tenya Iida. The spectacled teen raised his hand in greeting. It's truly a pleasure. Ochako put her hands behind her back with a cheery smile. I'm Ochako Uraraka. It's nice to meet all of you. Name's Denki Kaminari. The electric blonde said with a wink and a thumbs up. And I'm psyched too, gah. Hey. Unfortunately, Denki didn't get to finish as Mina just barged right in front of him and pushed him back with an ear-to-ear grin. I'm Mina Ishido, and did I mention that the way you just sliced that Viacon in half was super ultra cool? Windblade was taken aback by the pink girl's enthusiasm, but nonetheless, she responded in kind. Hey, yes you did, Mina. Well, it's a great pleasure to meet all of you kids, though I think full introductions would be best left for when we get to the base. Windblade stood to her full height and turned to the stack of Viacon corpses before her. That said, we're gonna have to do something about these guys. Don't worry, Windblade, Jazz assured as he tapped the side of his helm. I've already called up Sector 7 for cleanup. They've got the coordinates and should be here soon. However, an uncomfortable expression quickly formed across his features. Though we might be getting a visit from Fowler soon. Agent Burns said he was not happy with what he heard went down. He knows already. Windblade facepalmed with a groan. Great, so now we have him to deal with. Something tells me he's not gonna like the additions we're bringing back with us. Guess we'll just have to cross that bridge when we get to it. Izuku sighed before eyeing Bumblebee. Shall we? The yellow bot gave an affirming buzz before transforming back into his Volkswagen mode, which was met with a series of ahs and oohs from Ochako and the other newcomers. Izuku and the girls couldn't help but smile knowingly at their reaction. Hee, yeah, it's pretty awesome, isn't it? Insanely awesome. Mina clapped. Let's see it again. RC chuckled a bit before stretching her limbs, showing off a bit before granting her request. As you wish. WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. Within seconds, RC had jumped up and transformed in midair, landing on the ground in her Lotus Elise mode with her engine already revving up. The holoform of Sadie rematerialized in the driver's seat and she opened her doors up for everyone. Well, climb on in and let's roll. I call shotgun. Mina dashed toward the front seat. Momo's shoulders slumped a bit at that. Oh, I usually sit in front. Ah well, one time couldn't hurt. She went toward the backseat before craning her head around to Ochako. Uraraka, are you coming? Oh, yeah, of course. Ochako swiftly climbed into the back seat with Momo, though she started to get a bit apprehensive when Denki and Eijiro began to approach RC. Guys, no offense, but we've got more than just 2 rides now. Think you could hop on over to another so we can have room? The duo paused and Eijiro scratched at his head. Yeah, I guess you're right. He craned his head over to Jazz and offered a smile. Hey there, big guy, think you could get us a lift? If it isn't too much trouble. Denki added nervously. Hey, no trouble at all, my dudes. Jazz suddenly jumped up and performed a brief breakdance before shifting into his Porsche mode, which left Eijiro and Denki in utter shock and awe. Hey, impressed guys. Well, hop on in. Suddenly, Mei popped up from behind the two and set her hands to their shoulders, pushing them closer toward Jazz at the same time. Yeah, don't get cold feet now, ya jugheads. Let's do this. Wait, jugheads. Denki said with a pointed stare. The heck is that supposed to mean? Mei pursed her lips in thought, though that didn't stop her from essentially shoving the two into the back seat. Yeah, you've got a point. You two need nicknames. Eijiro and Denki couldn't help but deadpan at that before Mei snapped her fingers with a bright grin. Wait, I've got it. She pointed to Eijiro first. Spikes, her finger then trailed over to Denki. And Sparky. They're perfect. If anything, Denki's brow only furrowed further. Seriously. Sparky. Come on, that doesn't sound cool at all. Heck, it doesn't sound nearly as cool as Spikes. Hey, I think it sounds pretty cool. Jazz piped up. Gee, thanks for the vote of confidence. Denki muttered as Mei got into the Porsche's front seat. Eijiro nudged his friend in the arm, trying to boost his morale. Come on Sparky, don't be such a grump. We're riding inside an alien robot to go and see other alien robots. How cool is that? Slowly but surely, Denki's smile returned and he gave the redhead a shrug, admitting to his point before Eijiro gave a nod up to the front. Alright, now that that's settled, let's get to that secret base of yours. You got it, little man. Jazz agreed as his engine revved up, the disguised robot suddenly pulling a donut in the dirt to spin toward the other direction. Let's bug on outta here and head to Coruscant. It's gonna be a bumpy ride, so hold on to yo, AFTS. And just like that, Jazz was off like a rocket, speeding down the dirt path and making the teens inside all shout out gleefully. Seeing this, RC's holoform smirked and eyed the girls. "We're not about to let them outdo us, right ladies?" She received several eager smiles and a collective, "No way." In response to that, she pulled a U-turn of her own starting after Jazz immediately. "Great, so let's roll out." And without missing a beat, RC shot off after her fellow Autobot, leaving Bumblebee and Windblade behind with Izuku, Kyoka and Tenya as they loaded up into the former. The spectacle-wearing young man couldn't help but grimace after the two speeding bots, however. Honestly, don't they know how unsafe that is? We literally almost caused an incident on the road a few minutes ago and now they want to speed even more. Tenya threw up his hands in frustration. It's utterly ridiculous. Well, yeah, but it's also thrilling as hell. Kyoka pointed out, raising a brow to her stickler of a friend. Have you ever had fun in your life at all, Iida? HMPH. Why yes, I have, Jiro. Tenya crossed his arms and held his head up high proudly. But within reason. Thrill rides and such are one thing, but this is just plain unsafe. Kyoka rolled her eyes and buckled her seatbelt. Well, ya might wanna strap in, because if we wanna catch up to them, we're gonna have to do some crazy stuff. She heard Tenya grumble in the front seat as he buckled his own seatbelt before she poked her head out of her side window, craning her head up to Windblade. I guess we'll meet ya there, Windblade. The city speaker gave Kyoka a salute. Sure will. I'll be there ASAP just as soon as I make sure all of these Viacons are accounted for when Sector 7 picks them up. Just then, Izuku came over and stuck his head out as well, pointing over toward the trees. Oh, well just so you know then, there's actually one back in the forest over there. It's the one that we had to deal with. Windblade raised her irises in surprise. Wait, you kids faced off against a Viacon? Yep. Kyoka grinned, giving her a thumbs up. Ishido ended up blinding it and I took out its legs with my jacks. She nudged her head over to where Jazz was zooming off ahead. Kirishima and Kaminari handled the damage from there. And then Jazz, RC and Bumblebee finished it off, right? Windblade uttered hopefully. Nope, Kaminari pretty much overloaded the Viacon's head and it exploded. Izuku answered. Why do you ask? A slight chill went through Windblade's circuitry before she forced a smile. Oh, no reason, just wanted to make sure. Great job, guys. She noticed Bumblebee's holoform giving her a rather grim expression, but waved them all off all the same. You guys head on over to the base. I shouldn't be very long. Izuku and Kyoka waved back at her before securing themselves inside of Bumblebee, who suddenly screeched out of the clearing and down the dirt road with great speed. Windblade could practically hear Tenya screaming his head off as they went, which elicited a slight chuckle from her before her features grew just as sullen as Bumblebee's. She took in some air through her intakes before making her way over to the tree line, and it wasn't long until she found the Viacon's dead body. For the most part, it definitely seemed intact, but she knew that her main focus would be the head. She bent down and grasped its shoulder, turning it over onto its back, and she let out a gasp. Those kids did this. The Viacon's head was a complete wreck, its faceplate having been torn to shreds while its visor was burned away by what appeared to be acid. The head had been blown up to the point that she could see the comms processor, and even that wasn't completely intact. Windblade promptly stood up and shuddered at the complete horror before her. She had to remind herself that the kids likely didn't know what they were doing, especially Eijiro, Denki and Mina who were entirely new to all of this. But all the same, it was something that had to be rectified. I just hope Optimus understands. Windblade murmured before forcing herself to pick up the dead body, wincing as she heard several parts and fluids come trickling out from inside the head. Not long afterward, the entire crew found themselves back on the main highway headed toward the outskirts of Coruscant, and all of the teens were quite eager to arrive at the Autobots' secret headquarters. Windblade had managed to catch up at this point and was flying straight overhead, keeping her optics focused on the ocean as she tried desperately to keep that grisly image of the Viacon out of her head. As they got closer to their destination, though, she felt it only right to give the kids a heads up. Alright guys, we're nearly there. Now, I want you all to be on your best behavior, okay? There's a lot of stuff inside of our base that's not to be messed with, so keep that in mind. Gotcha, Windblade. Eijiro replied through Jazz's comlink. We'll make sure to stick close to you guys when we get there. So, are they already expecting us? Ochako asked via Arcee's comm. Yep, I've informed Optimus of the situation. Windblade affirmed. At least, mostly, she added in her head. So don't feel too intimidated when we go in, okay? Our friends may seem big, but they're all really nice. Just then, Kyoka piped up to add her own 2 cents. Just don't expect much from Red Alert. He's kind of a stickler if ya know what I mean. Windblade and the other bots couldn't help but laugh at the perplexed comment as they all finally arrived at the road to the base, and in no time at all, they were in front of the massive warehouse building itself. The Autobots all came to a halt and allowed the humans to disembark before transforming back into their robot modes, with Windblade taking the front. Well, everyone, we're here. She gestured to the building, presenting it as, "Welcome to Autobot Outpost Omega-1. The 5 newcomers couldn't help but stare at the building curiously, with Tenya putting a finger to his chin. That is a unique name for a facility like this. Jazz gave a shrug. Well, we had to call it something, ya know. Otherwise, other Autobots coming to Earth wouldn't be able to know what this place is. Wait, there's more of you coming. Denki's hand went up to his head in shock. That's crazy. But it's true. RC advocated. Optimus Prime himself sent a message into space calling for any Autobots near this solar system to come here for refuge. She and Bumblebee started forward as the energon field lowered and the nearest garage door began to open up for them. Speaking of, come on, it's time for you guys to meet the big bot. The others Autobots proceeded forward, though the teens hung back a bit, Izuku being able to clearly see the nervousness etched on most of their faces. Hey, don't worry guys, you'll be fine. The Greenette smiled. I promise. Yeah, Optimus and everyone else are very kind, I promise. Momo added. Even Red Alert, even if he's somewhat stern. Suddenly, Mina zoomed out in front of them all with her smile as eager as ever. Well then, come on. What are we waiting around here for? Let's head in. The pink girl practically sprinted after the 4 Autobots, leaving the other to pursue her. As they entered, the new arrivals weren't exactly too sure what to make of the place, as it pretty much resembled any old abandoned factory, if a bit cleaner than usual. But then, they all started to hear footsteps. From around a nearby corner, Red Alert and Bulkhead came strolling in, the 2 bigger bots immediately taking notice of the 5 newcomers. Red Alert came to an immediate halt while Bulkhead lumbered forward a bit more, wanting a closer look. So, I heard the humans multiplied. RC rolled her optics and scoffed. PSH, come on, Red Alert, no need to be so rude. Besides, humans don't multiply, but then, her irises rose slightly and she leaned down toward May. Did they? Well, technically yes, in more ways than one. May began counting the ways on her fingers. I mean, there's multiplication quirks and natural human reproduction, so that could be a form of multiplying. She noticed that RC was going to ask another question, but quickly stopped her. But please, do not ask me for details on that last one. Whoa. Mina suddenly rushed up as Bulkhead approached, forcing him to stop so that he wouldn't crush her beneath his feet. Hi, I'm Mina. Who are you? Oh, Bulkhead. The big green bot was taken aback by Mina's sudden introduction. So what do you transform into? Mina tapped her chin, taking in the vehicle details on Bulkhead before suddenly bringing her hands up. Wait, don't tell me. I'll bet you're a truck. No, hold on, a monster truck. And from there, she started pouring on the questions. Do you like destroying stuff? How much do you weigh? Ever use a wrecking ball as a punching bag? Hey. Ajiro quickly reeled Mina in, seeing Bulkhead quickly growing all the more confused by the moment. Hey, sorry about my friend there, big guy. She can get a bit overexcited. Mina glared daggers at Ajiro before pulling her arm away. I swear, Kirishima, you're not gonna take my cue and a session away from me. Bulkhead and Red Alert glanced toward one another, still quite unsure of what to make of the situation. And here I thought having one excitable youngling among us was too much. Red Alert muttered to himself before trekking away from the group, moving over to the large console that was near the very end of the room. It seemed only about half built, with a set of big screens situated above it. And of course, this had to happen while I was busy at work. Fantastic. As the group stared after him, though, Denki decided to state what everyone else was thinking, so, I'm guessing that's Red Alert. You've already heard of him then. Bulkhead deduced. Don't worry about him, kids. He's a good bot, he's just got a bit of a chip on his shoulder. Plus he's not exactly into being on Earth just yet. The rotund bot shook his head and smiled down to the others. But hey, let's focus on something else. Like. Clang. Everyone stopped talking and their attention went over to a nearby entryway, where loud metal clattering could be heard, followed up by grunt and groans from a certain pair of bots. Gah, hey, move out of the way, wide load. Wide load. You move it, punk. The group all couldn't help but stare awkwardly at the sight of Sideswipe and Strongarm, the two of them pushing against one another in a narrow entryway that couldn't fit both of them at the same time. Despite both of them being stuck, however, neither of them seemed willing to give an inch. Momo sighed and facepalmed at their behavior. Oh no, here we go again. Kyoka pinched the bridge of her nose in irrigation. Do those two ever stop fighting? She got a collective no from the Autobots as the fighting went on. Just what in the pit did you think was going to happen when we both walked through here anyway? Strongarm snapped. Hey, I thought you were gonna get out of my way. Sideswipe argued back. And why would I do that? Because I actually have a chassis that doesn't get in my own way, Miss Dorwings. Oh, you're so going to get, bam. Without warning, both bots felt something collide with their backsides and the two of them came stumbling out of the entryway, falling flat on their faces. They shook their heads and moved their sights back to see Sunstreaker making his way through the doorway, his hands on his hips and wearing an unamused frown. Seriously, you guys can't go through a simple door without getting into an argument. As if on cue, both Sideswipe and Strongarm pointed to one another and echoed, he started it. Sunstreaker put a hand to his helm and sighed. I don't know what I expected. It was then, though, that he noticed the team having gathered in the main room, and there were 5 new humans standing near Windblade and the others. Oh, guys, look alive, we've got some new guests. The red and blue bots watched on as Sunstreaker approached the group, offering a friendly hand to the new arrivals. Greetings, little humans. Name's Sunstreaker. He put on a dashing grin and struck a pose with his head held high. You've probably heard of me from Izuku and the ladies already. No actually, we haven't. Ochako admitted. Oh, I see. Sunstreaker head went down at the news that no one knew about him yet, the yellow and black bot feeling somewhat inadequate. However, that moment was fleeting as he collected his barring and pressed on. Aha, but that's actually a good thing since you get to experience my amazingness firsthand. He hopped back up to his peds and began striking more dynamic poses. After all, it takes absolute talent to look this good, am I right? The teens all deadpanned at the bot's boisterous claims, with Tenya leaning over to Izuku to whisper, is he really this conceited? Izuku rolled his eyes. You should see him when he chips his paint. But surprisingly, one of the teens was actually keen on agreeing with him. Hey, I'm hearing what you're saying, my man. Everyone's head snapped around toward Denki as he stepped closer to the bot, the electric blonde brushing his hand through his hair. Not everyone can appreciate the amount of work that people like us put into making ourselves look amazing. Sunstreaker's optics brightened up and he pointed 2 fingers to Denki. Hey, I like your style, kid. What's your name? Name's Denki Kaminari. The electric quirk user pointed between himself and Sunstreaker. And Sunstreaker, I think you and I might just be on the same page. Kyoka facepalmed hard at what she was hearing, and it was at that point where she tried to tune out the duo's conversation. Oh great, now we've got 2 guys who are obsessed with their looks on the team. Great, she trailed off when she saw Sideswipe approaching Ajiro, and immediately, she felt a headache coming on. Oh great, it's the union of 2 dude bros. This should be fun. Ajiro was slightly taken by surprise when Sideswipe crouched down near him, but nevertheless, decided to greet him all the same. Hi, I'm Ajiro Kirishima. He received no response as Sideswipe kept an inquisitive optic on him, which was admittedly a bit weird. You okay dude? Your head, it's pointing upward. Sideswipe commented. You mean my hair? Ajiro pointed to his red, spiky hair and ran his hand through it. Yeah, kinda hard to get it like this, but I think it's pretty awesome. Sideswipe smiled and gave him a nod, all while storing the hairstyle in his memory banks for later. Sweet, I like it. He offered his fist down to the young human thereafter. Name's Sideswipe. Nice to meet ya, Ajiro. Same here, Sideswipe. Ajiro knocked his fist against Sideswipe's before asking another question. So, what do you like to do around here? The red bot shrugged and began listing off activities he often did. You know, go racing, doing some sick training, bugging Strongarm. Breaking the rules, Strongarm said as she came up from behind Sideswipe with her arms crossed. Several times, might I add. Hey, I don't break the rules. Sideswipe argued back. I just bend them, a lot. Besides, name the last time I did anything remotely. I'm glad you said that, because I made a list. Strongarm lifted her hand, bringing up a holographic pad of some sort that she immediately began going over. Let's see, I've counted you running 3 traffic lights, 2 of which were also illegal left turns. Oh, and need I mention that you never used your blinkers either. Sideswipe glanced around nervously to see all of his compatriots staring at him in shock, which is when Strongarm decided to wrap it up. Top all of that with multiple speeding violations on Earth roads, and I'd say you bent several rules in the past couple of days. After that rather damning accusation, Sideswipe found himself stammering, trying to find a way to clap back at the police cadet. Oh come on, do you seriously expect me to get all of the rules of Earth's roads down pat after less than a decacycle? Strongarm folded her arms and raised an eyerage at him. Sideswipe, this planet both has less complex roads than Cybertron and yet still has similar traffic laws. I would have hoped that you'd learned them after only a few days. Sideswipe rolled his optics and waved her off. PSH, whatever. I'll get him down. Besides, were any humans hurt in those instances? No, because trust me, I would have known, and that is no excuse. Surprisingly enough, both Sideswipe and Strongarm were surprised that reprimand didn't come from the latter. Instead, the 2 bots craned their heads down to see Tenya approaching them, and he was giving a rather pointed glare at Sideswipe. I cannot believe what I'm hearing. You act so blasé about breaking every traffic law imaginable, yet you say it's okay just because no one got hurt. Well then, what happens when someone does get hurt, you miscreant? What then? To say that Sideswipe was taken aback was an understatement. He never expected a human to chew him out like this, and the fact that he had no response for it was something else that stunned him. And another thing, Tenya exclaimed as he began doing his usual stiff hand movements. Why in the world would you take pride in bending rules in the first place? Rules are meant to be followed, and I for one think you would do better to follow them. The blue-haired boy folded his arms sternly. Maybe then you would get into less arguments with your comrades more often. Strongarm was almost slack-jawed at just how thorough the young man was with his tirade. Not even she had been able to render Sideswipe that speechless. The only ones who could were either Optimus himself, or her former commanding officer, Prowl. A smile came to her lips and she lowered herself down to his level, though his back was still facing her. Hey, that was pretty good. Tenya spun around to see Strongarm now face to face with him, which while it did spook him, he was slightly reassured by her grin. Thank you. My apologies if I was out of line, though. Oh no, you're totally fine, really. Strongarm shook her head. Besides, it takes a lot to leave Sideswipe speechless. Not even I can do that. What's your name, by the way? Tenya's eyes widened before he immediately bowed to her. Oh, where are my manners? I am Tenya Iida. Strongarm bowed her head back. Nice to meet you, Tenya. I'm Strongarm. She extended her finger toward him, taking him aback slightly until she explained, I've heard that it's customary on your planet to shake hands. Yes. Of course. Tenya extended his own hand and grasped Strongarm's pointer finger, gladly shaking it. It was at that point when Mina piped up again, making sure that she was in the very center of things to gain everyone's attention. Okay, so I think that gets introductions out of the way. Now, let's get to the real nitty-gritty stuff. Her eyes brightened up as she began unloading questions yet again. What kind of robots are you guys? What planet are you guys from? Why are you on Earth? Why did those other bots attack us in the forest and how did they get here? Thump. Whoa. The humans could feel the floor shake a bit as more thunderous footsteps entered the room, and everyone turned around to see Optimus Prime coming in through the main entrance. The teens all gathered in front of him as he craned his head down to them, answering Mina's first question. We are autonomous robotic organisms from the planet Cybertron, also known as Autobots. Tenya, Eijiro, Denki, Mina and Ochako couldn't help but feel their jaws drop at the sight of the big bot, his red, white and blue color scheme and his commanding yet gentle voice being one of the first things they noticed. Ochako leaned over to Izuku and whispered, "So, I'm guessing this is Optimus Prime." "Yep, sure is," Izuku confirmed before walking forward, sending an apologetic gaze up to Prime. Hi, Optimus. Sorry that this had to happen and all, but think nothing of it, Izuku. Prime assured as he knelt down to one knee, bringing himself closer to the children. Given the circumstances of the situation, it is only natural that you would attempt to keep your friends safe. His optics moved up to RC and Bumblebee, who were sheepishly standing not too far away. It is something that all of you must be commended for. With that said, however, I fear that with this attack, our time being safe here on Earth has been effectively cut short. Eijiro stepped up and waved his hand to the Autobot commander. Whoa, hold up. Back up a bit there. What do you mean by safe? Optimus sighed before pressing on. Unfortunately, Eijiro, it appeared we are not the only ones who know about your planet anymore. The redhead's eyebrows rose up, though not for the reason one might expect. Wait, how do you know my name? I called ahead, remember? Windblade interjected as she and Jazz walked up to stand next to Optimus. I gave Optimus some of the details on you and your friends before we arrived. He pretty much knows who you guys are by now. Indeed. Optimus nodded to each of the teens as he greeted them. It's a pleasure to meet you, Eijiro, Denki, Ochako, Mina and Tenya. My hope is that you will feel safe among us, although I do also feel the need to apologize. He extended his hand toward the five. After all of you were pulled into this conflict by accident, and for that, I'm truly sorry. MHA. What's there to apologize for? Mina guffawed, surprising the Prime. Do you know just how much more interesting our lives just became? We're standing amongst giant alien robots that transform into vehicles. She thrust her hands into the air and shouted, my life feels so much more complete. A chuckle managed to escape Prime's throat, the bot smiling beneath his faceplate. Haha. Well, I cannot fault your enthusiasm, Mina. Optimus trailed off as his tone became a bit more serious again. But, to answer your other questions, we are here for several reasons. Namely due to our conflict with the Decepticons. Those punks that tried to bump us off the road. Jazz added. Our planet was once a peaceful world. Optimus went on. Though one that was ruled by a caste system that assigned Cybertronians their roles depending on their vehicle modes. However, eventually the High Council was challenged by a gladiator who actively defied them, and sought to change the entirety of the way Cybertron was governed to benefit those who wanted to be more than what their alternate mode said they should be. Prime paused for a moment as the memories came flooding back. For a time, I agreed with this gladiator, and I even came to see him as a mentor at one time. But then, I began to see his true colors as he felt falling further and further from his initial goals. When he demanded the High Council to be named the next Prime, I could not sit idly by, so I made my own case for how Cybertron could be changed for the better. He hung his head low and concluded his story. In doing so, though, my old friend took action against me, his ideals corrupted. And it was thus, that Megatron found the Decepticons and lost his way. There was an uncomfortable silence throughout the room before Denki decided to speak up. That sounds pretty rough. Kyoka rolled her eyes and scoffed at him. PSH, understatement of the century there, Buzz Brain. So this, Megatron, and the Decepticons, what did they want with Earth? Tenya asked. Many things, Tenya. Foremost, they are most certainly searching for us. Prime placed a hand to his chest. Megatron's primary goal is to take over Cybertron and destroy anyone who dares stand in his way, and we are actively doing so by simply existing. By that point, Red Alert had actually returned to the conversation, so he added his own 2 cents. The Autobots and Decepticons have been warring for eons, children. As such, while we may hide from them, the Decepticons will surely come searching for us. He gestured over to the console that he had previously been working on. It's important to make sure the base remains a secret and our defenses are combat ready. Ochako shuffled in place with concern etched across her features. Okay, so what happens if they did find out where the base is? Blow it to smithereens, more than likely. Bulkhead answered. Especially if they've got a warship with them. He raised a single finger and explained, a single Decepticon warship with the right weapons can pretty much level an entire Cybertronian settlement. He clenched his fist in ire and gave a sigh. I still remember the day that the Crystal City was destroyed. Ochako and everyone else grew several shades paler after hearing that. Thanks, Bulk. I hate it, Mina quipped. So do many others. Optimus concurred. Which is why it's integral to our mission that this place remains secret. Can you all promise that? Without hesitation, the 5 newcomers all gave him a resolute nod. You can count on us, Optimus. We'll make sure that no one else finds this place. Eijiro promised before quirking a brow up to the Autobot leader. But what exactly is your mission here? And I can only guess that the Decepticons are gonna try and stop you, right? They will, indeed. Prime said before tapping his wrist to bring up a hologram of what appeared to be a rather large spaceship with 4 huge thrusters at the back. Especially with an important mission such as this. Several hundred years ago, an Autobot spacecraft known as the Ark left Cybertron, though unfortunately, its signal was lost once it reached this planet. He tapped his arm again and a new hologram came up. A crystal shard. In turn, the ship's mission was to locate a planet that had several caches of a substance known as energon, the lifeblood of our race which was depleted from Cybertron as our war continued to rage over the planet. What started as a civil war of ideals became a war over resources, and thus, we felt the need to locate potential energon caches on alien worlds. The Decepticons tried everything to stop the Ark from launching, but we managed to get it off planet and through a space bridge before they could. Whoa, space bridge. Denki repeated with a smirk. Now that sounds pretty cool. And you would be correct. May smiled widely as she began to gush about it. From what I hear, the space bridge network is a collection of portal devices that have been set up across the entire galaxy. They basically allow Cybertronians to travel anywhere in the cosmos so long as there's a stable connection. The inventor snapped her head up to the Autobot medic. Right, Red. Red Alert gave a simple shrug. In layman's terms, yes, that's essentially how it works. He pointed over to the adjacent room, where the teens could see a massive ring-shaped structure standing within. Though I would also add that for a ground bridge model, 2 connections are not necessary. The more compact size means that only one is necessary, in exchange for not being able to transport off-planet. Immediately, the medic saw Mina's eyes brighten up in curiosity and she made a beeline for the room, but he was quick enough to stop her by putting his hand in front of her. Not a toy. I just got that thing up and running, so stay clear of it, understand? Mina pouted in a huff, facing away from Red Alert while folding her arms. Man, you're no fun. So, you guys are here searching for the Ark and for Energon. Ochako concluded. And we can safely say that the Decepticons will want to do the same, but for different reasons. That's right, Ochako. Optimus furrowed his metallic brow, his mind going out to all of the Autobots on board that craft. If the Decepticons find the Ark before we do, they will no doubt take the chance to destroy all of the Autobots who are in stasis on board. And if they manage to plunder Earth of its energon, they will return it to Cybertron and Megatron will use it to fully conquer the planet. He tightened his fist in determination. And we can't let that happen. Tenya, Ochako, Mina, Eijiro and Denki all looked to one another before nodding all at once again, facing back up to Optimus with great confidence. How can we be of assistance, Optimus Prime? Tenya asked. Momo and the others were surprised by how quickly that came about. I have to say, I expected a lot more hesitation. Yeah, so did I. Windblade admitted. But you guys seem pretty raring to go. Ochako smiled to her and gave a thumbs up. Well, yeah, why wouldn't we be? After all, this is our planet that the Decepticons are targeting. Plus, we're literally learning how to be heroes. There must be some way we can help fight against them. Optimus chortled at the girl's words, but all the same, he felt it necessary to keep things within reason. While I do appreciate your eagerness to help, Ochako, I have to highly advise against actively fighting against the Decepticons. They aren't your normal, everyday villains, after all. They are far more dangerous. Denki smirked and pointed up to Prime. Really now? Well, I wouldn't exactly tell that to the ones that we ran into earlier. At that, Bumblebee, RC, Windblade and Jazz all froze up, knowing exactly where this was going. Those 6 Viacons went down no problem. PSH, well yeah, they're Viacons. Sideswipe scoffed. They're essentially foot soldiers that fill out the Decepticon ranks. Yeah, taking down one of them isn't all that difficult. Sunstreaker agreed. You should be thankful that those weren't Seekers, otherwise, you'd be in deep scrap. But Mina still held her head up high, giving them a wink. Oh really? Well, what if I told you that this group, she gestured collectively toward the rest of her fellow students, managed to take on a Viacon by themselves, and win. At that moment, every Autobot in the room all felt their optics widen at the news, their mouths all parting open in shock. The only ones who weren't were the 4 bots who were actually there for it, and they were all visibly cringing. Say what now? Strongarm uttered. Optimus eyed Windblade, his tone of voice quite serious. Windblade, why did I not hear of this? Well, Windblade rubbed the back of her neck, really not sure how to answer that. Fortunately, or unfortunately depending on the outlook, she didn't have to. Yeah, why didn't you tell him, Windblade? Kyoka said with a proud smile, wrapping one of her jacks around her finger. I mean, not to brag, but I think I came up with a pretty ingenious plan to bring that con down. And the way that Mina and Ochako managed to escape its grasp was also quite clever. Momo added while the 2 aforementioned girls beamed behind her. You guys really should have seen how they handled it. Eijiro slammed his fist into the palm of his hand. Yeah, and the way that Kaminari and I finished it off. Man, that was intense. All at once, the Autobots felt their energon chill at the choice of words Eijiro had. Finished it off. Bulkhead echoed. Heck yeah. Eijiro hardened up his skin and began punching the air. Once Jiro and Iida took its legs out, I gave it a couple of good punches right in its face. And once I juiced it up with about 10,000 volts, there was no coming back from that. Denki gloated as he let off a couple of sparks from his finger. That dumb Viacon drone had absolutely no idea what hit it. The Autobots were all deathly silent for a few good seconds, all of them both stunned and somewhat reluctant to say anything. However, someone finally decided to speak up about it, and it was the one who couldn't speak. ZRKT, Houston, we have a problem. Windblade winced, biting her lip before coming clean with the children. Yeah, Bumblebee's right guys. There's something really important that you all have to know. She put her hand to her neck as all of the teens had their confused eyes on her, which didn't exactly make her feel better. Viacons aren't drones. They're just as alive as the rest of us. One by one, the city speaker could see the realization dawning on all of them, and Eijiro's confident grin dissipated as his skin unhardened. I don't. You're kidding. Mina put her hand to her head, silently hoping that what Windblade said wasn't true. Please tell me you're not kidding. I'm afraid she isn't, children. Optimus Prime shook his head. His tone of voice was certainly disappointed, but also sympathetic at the same time, though that didn't stop the kids from the feeling of utter guilt washing over them. Viacons may appear like drones with them being so identical, but they do in fact have sparks just like any normal Cybertronian. It is a common mistake, but they are not drones or anything else of the like. Izuku felt his legs give out from under him as the realization hit him like a truck. But then, that means. Holy shit. Kyoka almost screamed while clutching her jacks, her features twisted in horror. We killed that Viacon. Ochako also fell to her knees, her hands flying up through her hair as tears began forming in her eyes. No. It can't be true. Her head snapped up to Optimus desperately. Please tell me this is all some sort of trick. Ochako, I'm sorry. RC whispered as she came up behind the girl, setting her large hand onto her back for comfort. We tried to tell you back in the forest, but we didn't feel like it would be the right time. The gravity quirk user sniffled and set her sights up to the pink fembot, her tears starting to fall. I'm sorry. She hugged RC's hand firmly as she started breaking down. I'm so sorry. Yeah, so am I. Kyoka smacked her fist against a wall and faced away from the group, though Izuku tried to offer his own comfort by putting his hand on her shoulder. I saw how RC just shot one in the head and figured it'd be okay too. Kyoka choked back a sob as she reached for Izuku's hand, grasping it until her knuckles turned white. Damn it, this fucking sucks. I get where you're coming from, Kyoka. Jazz empathized, with the other Autobots nodding in agreement. But there's a big difference there. He gestured around to his teammates and put a hand to his chest. We're soldiers who've been fighting a war for eons. It's kinda in our job description to do the stuff we do, even if it involved doing stuff we don't like. He extended a hand down to the humans. You guys on the other hand, you're just kids who are training to be. Graw. Slam. Everyone whipped their heads around to see Tenya having smashed his fist into a nearby wall, the bespectacled student glowering at it in both anger and frustration. He also looked like he was about to cry, but he kept it together. This has to be a mistake. We're training to be heroes. Yet, we failed to follow a fundamental rule of the trade. Tenya's head hung low and shakily said, heroes don't kill. Even if they're completely evil, heroes do not kill. But, we did. Mina choked out as her hands went up to her face, her own tears falling freely. We killed a random Viacon. I feel like utter trash. Bulkhead raised his hands in an attempt at consolation. Hey, don't beat yourselves up too much over this. You guys had no idea that Viacons weren't normal drones, so it's not really your fault. You were just going your survival instincts and you did what came to your heads first. Optimus crouched down again in front of the humans, speaking to them as gently as possible. Bulkhead is right. You acted on instinct and it resulted in a terrible accident being made. However, in doing that, I believe that a powerful lesson has been learned here. The humans remained silent until Momo came to the conclusion, don't fight the Decepticons. Precisely, unless absolutely necessary. Optimus clarified. You all have unique powers and should definitely make use of them if an emergency situation arises. He raised a single finger toward them. But you should never use your quirks to kill. Just as Tenya pointed out, that is not what a hero does. If you find yourselves in trouble with a Decepticon, use your quirks to get away as best as you can, and then we will handle the rest. Is that understood? Yes, Optimus. The students collectively muttered, still clearly upset. Good, because if you want to master your quirks in time for the sports festival, we have a lot of training to do. Within a single instant, everyone's somber moods briefly broke for a moment and they set their eyes back up to Optimus, most of them confused at what he meant. What do you mean, Optimus? Ochako asked. What does this have to do with the sports festival? Izuku cleared his throat and he began explaining. Oh, yes, well, here's the thing about that. The Autobots actually agreed to help us out with getting ready for the sports festival. He looked to Kyoka, Momo and Mei, the three girls giving affirming nods. We were just about to start our training today, actually, but, well, you know what happened. Eijiro's eyes widened at the prospects. Whoa, you guys not only made friends with these guys, but they agreed to train you too. Wow. Mina wiped away her tears and her smile returned in an instant. Talk about lucky. I know right. So jealous right now. Denki added. Sunstreaker raised an eyelid toward the group. Well, if you're so jealous, then do you guys wanna join your friends? The more the merrier, I always say. Hey yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Kyoka sent an encouraging smile to her friends with a determined fist. You guys should totally join in. I mean, hell, I'm sure that the Autobots must be able to help you guys out with your quirks in some way, right? You bet we can. Strongarm brought her hand up and projected yet another holographic list, scrolling through it with a swipe of her finger. I have several training protocols that we can execute over the next 2 weeks that you guys have to train. All we would have to do is adhere to the type of quirk you have and we'd be able to help all of you excel. The 5 teens were lost for words. Even after learning that they had killed a Decepticon, the Autobots were still willing to help them. Are you serious? Tenya asked. Sideswipe gave him a thumbs up. Straight up, man. You guys are pretty much a part of the team now, anyway, so why not, right? Clang. Ow. Strongarm narrowed her optics after knocking Sideswipe over the head, her smile coming back a second later. What Sideswipe means is that we want to help you give your very best in that sports festival. Optimus rose to his feet once again, though kept his gaze on the young humans. I understand how you all must feel after the events that transpired. However, the fact that you did bring down the Viacon goes to show that your powers are truly exceptional. He balled his hand up into a fist. However, the key now is being able to harness your abilities and help them grow. Preferably without the deadly force. Red Alert added. But Optimus is correct, you children do have great potential. Now, are you in or are you out? PSH, what kinda question is that? May scoffed with an eye roll. Of course they're in. Red, she craned her head around to the others with her smile unrelenting. Right guys. I mean, you've gotta admit, it sounds like a great deal. The five eyed one another for a brief second before collectively smiling back to May. Hey, ya know, it really does. Ajiro said with another thumbs up. Optimus Prime, you've got yourself a deal. Yay. Mina pumped her arms up and down, her excitement levels going clear through the roof as she sang, we get to train with Autobots. We get to train with Autobots. But then, she let out a gasp and promptly spun around to Bulkhead. Hey, you think you can throw boulders at me so I can do some target practice with my acid, Bulkhead? The green bot visibly winced at the idea. Hey, why don't we try smaller targets instead? Wait, you can shoot acid. Sure can. Mina clapped her hands together and began collecting acid that seeped through her pores, before then chucking it at a nearby piece of scrap metal. Check it out. Splat. Once the acid hit, the metal began to melt instantly, and within seconds, it was almost completely gone. Bulkhead had to admit, that was impressive. Wow, that melted faster than any form of corrosive I've seen. You've got quite a quirk, Mina. He received a cheery smile and a peace sign from the pink girl in return. Hey yo, Ajiro. Sideswipe waltzed over to the spiky redhead and bent over to him. What was your quirk again? Something to do with hardening. Oh yeah, check it. Ajiro rolled up his sleeves and brought up his arms, hardening them up again. I'm able to harden my skin to super dense levels. It's not exactly the flashiest quirk. He spotted an old wooden desk that was just ripe for the chopping, so he rushed over and began beating up on it relentlessly. When he was done, the desk was little more than a pile of splinters. But it gets the job done. Sideswipe blinked a couple times at what he saw before belting out a laugh. Haha. Oh man, that was so awesome. And actually, Sideswipe raised his own arm and retracted his hand, which was then replaced by a rather large piledriver that looked as thick as any metal possibly could. I think I could help toughen you up a bit. What say you and I do some awesome training? Ajiro's eyes immediately lit up eagerly. Whoa, for real. Hey, sign me right up. Meanwhile, Sunstreaker had went over to Denki, his own curiosity getting the better of him. So, Denki, it seems your quirk deals with electricity. He rubbed his chin as he leaned in intently. Tell me more about how your quirk works, if ya don't mind. Hey, sure thing. Denki snapped his fingers, all while generating a small crackle of lightning. See, my quirk, electrification, works like this. I can generate electricity from any point on my body, which kind of makes it like a protective barrier. I'm basically a living taser. He pursed his lips slightly as the downsides of his quirk began to enter his mind. But, there are a couple of crappy side effects. I can't control where my electricity goes, so I end up shocking everyone around me most of the time, so allies pretty much aren't safe from me. And when I end up going over a certain voltage, he clenched his fist in frustration. Kyoka slid onto the scene with her hand over her mouth, trying to keep herself from laughing as she pointed to Denki. You become a total goober, that's what. Gah. Hey. Denki rounded about on her and pointed a finger at the punk girl. I'm not that bad, Jiro. Kyoka wore a toothy smirk as she pulled out her phone. Oh really? Because this photo says otherwise. She showed it picture off to Denki and Sunstreaker, and both were beholden to Denki's derp face as he was covered in black soot. The electric blonde's jaw fell to the ground and Sunstreaker had to bite down on his lip to keep himself from laughing, but that didn't stop Kyoka from doing so. BAHAHA. Oh my god, your reaction is priceless. I'm definitely keeping this picture for when I need a laugh. As she kept guffawing, Izuku went over to Denki and sent him a sympathetic look. Hey, don't take it so personally, Kaminari. If anything, this should at least give you some motivation to get better with your quirk, right? Denki shook his head and raised a determined fist. Ya know what? Yeah, you're right. I wanna make sure I can go over any voltage without frying my brain. Well, lucky for you, I might be able to help you out with that. Sunstreaker pulled his own hand back into his arm and produced a set of panels that were covered in a shimmering black material, making them appear like solar panels. There were about 4 panels total on each wrist and they all spun around while tilting outward. What are those? Denki asked. These are specially designed energy absorption panels. Sunstreaker explained. I'm capable of taking any energy-based attack that's thrown at me. He retracted his other hand and brought out rectangular-shaped cannon from his arm. And redirect it over here into my solar flare cannon. He gave them a wink and added, how do ya think I got the name Sunstreaker? Denki, you train with me and I'll help ya get your electricity tolerance levels up in no time. Denki was all too happy to agree with that. You're on, Sunstreaker. As that was happening, Strongarm had moved over to Ochako and Tenya. Her own curiosity piqued when it came to their quirks. So, Tenya, Ochako, what's up with your quirks? I'm sure they must be something special. Ochako felt a small blush on her cheeks after Strongarm's compliment, the brunette bashfully scratching her face as well. Well, you're really too kind, Strongarm. She reached down and picked up a lone rock that was sitting on the ground and made sure all of her fingertips made contact, which allowed the stone to float in midair the moment she let go. My quirk lets me remove an object's gravity when my fingers touch it, be it inanimate or even living. It's really as simple as that, nothing too complicated. I beg to differ. Strongarm refuted. Ochako, your quirk is amazing. To have something so versatile literally at your fingertips is something to be proud of. The cadet reached down and tapped the stone, which floated off to the right. So, how do you make it heavy again? Like this, Ochako put her fingertips together and said, now, release. Her fingers flashed pink for a second and the stone promptly fell right to the ground. See, simple as that, though admittedly, smaller objects are a lot easier for me to handle. Her features twisted in discomfort as she recalled having to lift the Viacon earlier. Heavier ones end up making me sick. I see, well then I think helping you gradually lift heavier objects with your quirk will be the goal of your training. Strongarm concluded. Don't worry, we'll get there. She received another grin from the brunette before going to Tenya. And what about you, Tenya? What's your quirk? Yes, of course. Tenya reached down and pulled up his pant legs, exposing his calves for Strongarm to see, and judging by how her optics widened, she was able to clearly see his quirk. I have engines in my legs that allow me to run at great speeds. It is the Iida family quirk, so my family have helped me train in using it. Strongarm zoomed in on Iida's legs, analyzing the strange organic engines within his legs. By Primus. Red alert, you have to come and see this. The medic grumbled a bit, but came over nonetheless. And the moment he began to analyze Iida's legs himself, he understood why Strongarm was so shocked. Fascinating. He set his sights over to Iida and asked, Tenya, what is the maximum speed that you've reached with your engines? Tenya thought it over for a moment before giving his answer. Last I checked, about 100 kilometers per hour. I can go faster with my recipro burst, but it burns out my engines for a short time after. I see. Well, if you continue to train, I have no doubt that you will probably be able to go much faster naturally. Red Alert explained as he pointed to his legs. After analyzing those engines, I'd say they're capable of carrying you at far greater speeds than you're going right now. Tenya glanced down to his engines in surprise. Well, my older brother is faster than me, so there is precedence for your claim, Red Alert. He balled his fist and raised his voice with a determined bravado. Very well then, I know what I must do. I shall put even more effort into my cardio workout and strive to run faster every day. I must make sure I impress at the sports festival. After all, my brother will likely be watching. Now that's the spirit. Strongarm gave a thumbs up. And I'll make sure to help in whatever way I can, so long as we don't break any speed limits. Oh, of course. Tenya raised his right hand proudly. I would never allow such a thing to happen even during my workouts. Ochako deadpanned a bit at that. But doesn't that kinda go against the point of your workout? As everyone talked amongst themselves, Optimus, Windblade, RC, Jazz and Bumblebee continued to stay off to the side, watching on as the bots and humans mingled with one another. Eventually though, Izuku, Kyoka, Mei and Momo came back over to them, the greenette in particular smiling up to the 5 bots. Well, everyone seems to be settling in with the team pretty well, huh? No kidding. Windblade concurred, watching as Mina continued to melt more stuff with Bulkhead watching on. And here I thought the newbies would be intimidated by us. Assumptions can oftentimes be unfounded, Windblade. Optimus noted. That, and I'm sure that the children must be quite fascinated by us. Kyoka snickered at that. Hey, well yeah, you guys are giant alien robots. Why wouldn't they be interested? Her focus then shifted over to Jazz, raising a single brow at him. So Jazz, you ready to get started on that sonic training you promised me? The Autobot lieutenant gave her a thumbs up. Oh, you know it. Sonic training. Momo tilted her head. What do you mean by that? Hey, well, Kyoka here wanted to see if I could help her pump up the volume she puts out through her jacks a bit. Jazz explained as he crouched down next to the girl, giving her a pat on the back. And, thankfully, I got just the thing that can help. WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. Jazz transformed into his vehicle mode and, surprisingly, a pair of large dish-shaped speakers came folding out of his trunk, propping themselves onto the sides of his Porsche mode. And apparently, May recognized them instantly. Ah, sonic disruptors. Yep, and, they're the centerpiece of my own little sound and light show. Jazz transformed back into his robot mode, putting the speakers away as well. They were left over from my days as a DJ before the war, but I decided to keep him around. Works pretty well for giving cons a good blast in their audio receptors. Kyoka jerked her thumb up to the visored Autobot. And he's gonna let me practice using those, we just gotta find a good target first. Momo smiled to her friend supportively. Well, I certainly wish you luck in your training, Kyoka. However, she then pursed her lips in thought, her hand going to her chin. Though now I wish I had some idea on how I could go about my own training. Ahem, Windblade knelt down behind Momo and tapped her lightly on the head, making the young girl spun around to her. Actually, I've been thinking about that. Momo, I've noticed that you're able to create many things from your body, but I was wondering about how someone with a quirk like yours would fare in combat situations. This definitely took Momo by surprise, but at the same time, she found herself interested. Combat. Well, I am capable of creating weapons on the fly, so I'd say I'm able to do well. Windblade raised an eyelash at the raven-haired beauty. Would you like to put that to the test, then? Momo responded with a resolute nod and said, you're on. Well, you guys can practice blowing stuff up and hitting things all you want. May said as she reached into her large backpack and pulled out her experimental hover boots. But me, I'm gonna be working on these babies with Red Alert. The group all stared at me as if she had just said something asinine, though Izuku was the only one to voice their concerns. Did you ask Red Alert to help you with your invention, Hatsume? Nope, but he will. May wore a devious grin as she eyed the medic, a gleam in her bright yellow eyes. He definitely will. Hey, zip. And just like that, the pink-haired inventor rushed off toward Red Alert, no doubt ready to bug him until he agreed to help. Man, never thought I'd say this, but I kinda feel sorry for Red. Kyoka admitted. Izuku glanced up to Optimus. Should we go help him? Well, under normal circumstances, I would. Optimus folded his arms and watched as May began to show Red Alert her hover boots, which the medic seemed to be indifferent toward. However, Red Alert must also learn to accept you humans as part of the team. And if May is capable of doing that through her unconventional methods, then perhaps there may be hope for that. He craned his head down toward Izuku, wanting to change the subject. Now, Izuku, I have been wanting to speak with you about your training. Woom. However, the Autobot commander was cut off when a low-pitched alarm suddenly started blaring throughout the entire base, accompanied by a green light. The humans and Autobots all stopped talking and snapped their heads up. Hey, what's that? Eijiro asked. Proximity alert. Red Alert explained as he moved away from May and over to the console he was at a few moments ago. I just finished installing it. After pressing a few buttons, a holographic screen popped up over the console and began projecting security camera footage, which showed a helicopter with an S07 logo on its side approaching the base. And we have visitors. The Autobots and humans gathered around to see the helicopter come in for a landing, and the first two people out of it made the five newcomers' jaws drop. Is that Mr. Aizawa? Mina exclaimed. And Principal Nezu. Tenya added as their perpetually tired, mummified homeroom teacher and the mammalian principal of UA stepped out of the helicopter. What in the world are they doing? Thwoom. Without warning, the ground began to shake slightly as something, or rather someone landed directly outside of the base. The camera zoomed out, and if possible, the students were left even more shell-shocked. Oh my. There, standing tall with his hands on his hips and his signature smile, was All Might himself. The number one hero's sights went to the front entrance and he called out, "My Autobot compatriots. We are here to check up on you and the students. We are very concerned about their well-being after the attack." Tina and the others all set their sights upon Izuku and the girls, all of them visibly stunned. "They know," they collectively said. Izuku and the ladies smiled nervously at the intense stares they were giving, the green-haired boy shakily laughing. Why yeah, that's something we were going to get to eventually. All Might was one of the first who actually knew about the Autobots, since he and I were the ones who found Bumblebee. Hold on, you what? Denki questioned. Ochako let that sink in before realizing something else. Wait, you said that you've known Bumblebee for over 6 months, so that would mean, her eyes narrowed at Izuku and her lips pursed in thought. Midoriya, just how long have you known All Might? Izuku was about to answer, but Kyoka put a hand to his shoulder. Long story, one that we don't have time for. She trailed off when she saw someone else exit the helicopter, and it wasn't someone she was too excited to see. Gah, crap, Agent Fowler's here too. Denki's hands flew up and clutched his hair. Okay, can we go 10 seconds where we all get a clear answer as to what's going on? Special Agent Fowler is our designated liaison to the outside world. Optimus explained, garnering the humans' attention. He is part of a secret organization known as Sector 7, a branch of Earth government that specializes in extraterrestrial activity. He faced the screen again and saw Fowler come marching up toward the base, and he didn't seem too happy. I can only imagine he's here due to the incident. The Autobot leader focused back down to the teens, specifically toward Tenya, Mina, Eijiro, Denki and Ochako. It may be best for you 5 to remain unseen for the moment as we break the news to Fowler and your teachers. Mina gave him a salute. Yes sir, Optimus Prime, sir. Lucky for you, I have experience with hiding from teachers. With that, Mina zipped around and began pushing against all 4 of her classmates, eliciting yelps from all of them. Now come on, let's go. Good. Optimus sent his optics back to Izuku and the girls. You 4, meanwhile, shall accompany us. You are their main concern, after all. Following a silent nod from all 4 teens, the Autobots proceeded toward the entrance, ready to face the music. 2 days. Aizawa said monotonously as he dragged his hand across his bandaged face. It took all of 2 days for those kids to get themselves into trouble. Now, Mr. Aizawa, let's not blame them for this. Nezu raised his little paw, hoping that his colleague would see reason. After all, one could not have predicted that the Decepticons would come to this planet so soon. All Might folded his arms and nodded. Indeed, it's troubling news to be sure. Luckily no one was harmed in that freeway incident. He glanced down to see Fowler come storming up toward the entrance, passing him entirely. Though I suppose I'm the only one seeing the bright side of things, right Bill? Fowler cringed at All Might's point, but let out a sigh. What do you want me to say, Toshinori? That we should be grateful that the most damage that this chase did was completely destroy Mustafu's traffic. Hey, any crash you can walk away from, right? All Might pointed out. And besides, the Autobots got the cons away as soon as they could. Just as Fowler was about to argue back, though, the front garage door opened up and everyone set their attention toward the building. Thankfully, the first thing All Might saw were the 4 students, with Izuku offering a greeting smile. Aha, there you are. The symbol of peace approached his protege as he and the ladies walked out, placing a hand on his shoulder as he met him. Young Midoriya, good to see you all unharmed. Hi, All Might. Izuku greeted back. I guess you guys heard the big news. Indeed, and you had us all very concerned. All Might craned his head up to the Autobots as they stepped out of the base. Thankfully, it seems no one was harmed. RC held her head up proudly while Bumblebee gave a thumbs up. What can we say? We take our roles as guardians very seriously. Jazz pointed 2 fingers to the UA. Teachers. And, you can take that to the bank. All 4 of them came out without a scratch, as you can see. Beneath his bandages, Aizawa narrowed his eyes at the lieutenant. Oh really? If that's the case, then I certainly hope that the other kids are just as unharmed. The moment he saw the surprised look from Jazz and the others, he pointed up at them. And don't even try to play dumb with us. The UA security cameras caught it all. Aizawa lifted up his phone and brought up said security footage, showing all 9 students suddenly get piled into RC and Bumblebee before rushing off down the street, with the Viacons in hot pursuit. Care to explain that? The 4 teens and Autobots all eyed one another awkwardly. Well, crap, Kyoka muttered. That didn't last long. No, it did not. Prime admitted before turning toward the base once again. Mina, bring everyone out. They already know. After about a second, Mina peeked her head out from the corner with an unamused frown. Seriously, she said before shoving Tenya and the others out from the corner, with Denki falling on his face for good measure. Man, and here I thought we'd managed to at least surprise them. No surprises here, I'm afraid, Miss Ishido. Nezu shook his head. However, I must say, you were all quite brave for being thrust into a situation such as this. Aizawa, however, was not as kind. But you're all still in deep trouble. He pointed toward Izuku and the other girls in particular. Especially the 4 of you. You see the enemy approaching and your first instinct is to bring unknowing civilians with you. Izuku was about to stutter out an answer, but surprisingly, it was RC who came to his aid. Mr. Aizawa, it was my idea. The homeroom teacher's eyes widened slightly as RC came clean. I was the one who told them all to get inside when the cons found us. I had a gut feeling that no matter what happened, they'd still go after those 5 even if we left them behind. And they likely would have. Optimus concurred. RC made the correct decision in this instance, and I do not blame her for her actions. Aizawa furrowed his brow up to Optimus. So now what, Prime? Saying that you can handle 4 kids is one thing, but 9. I can assure you, Mr. Aizawa, that the children will be safe with us. Prime glanced toward Bulkhead, Strongarm, Sideswipe and Sunstreaker briefly. Even if we must assign more guardians to them in order to facilitate that. But I promise you, your students will remain safe with us. Just then, Tenya promptly rushed over to the 3 teachers and bowed before them in respect. Mr. Aizawa, Principal Nezu, All Might, sirs, I implore you. I can promise you that we can and will keep this important secret. He straightened himself up and locked eyes with the 3. Though as class rep, it does hurt to keep this secret from the rest of my fellow students. I understand the gravity of this situation perfectly and am willing to keep my lips sealed. Yeah, S02, Eijiro said as he helped Denki up. We'll make sure to not speak a peep about the Autobots in school. He raised an eyebrow over to Mina. Right, Ishido. The pink girl rolled her eyes in response. PSH, duh. Of course I won't speak about this to anyone. You act like I can't keep a secret. I mean, that's kind of an easy assumption to make. Ochako thought to herself before bowing her head toward the teachers. I also promise to not reveal this secret to anyone, sirs. Believe me, the last thing I want is to put anyone else at UA in more danger. The 3 teachers continued to lock eyes with the 5 students for a short while before Nezu shifted his gaze between All Might and Aizawa. Well, I think that seals the deal on that. I can tell just by their eyes that they mean every word of what they're saying. Indeed. Students, it's good to have you on board. All Might saluted. Just be sure that you all remain vigilant and careful. The Decepticons are not for you to be trifled with. Leave them to the Autobots, is that clear? All 9 of the UA students eyed each other awkwardly as Denki rubbed the back of his neck. Oh, trust me, we know. We kinda learned that the hard way. Huh, alright, fine. Aizawa mumbled tiredly. Just so long as you're all clear on that, I'll allow it. But now, we should probably get to 7 Rex. Fowler suddenly cut in, taking them all off guard as he approached Prime himself. 34 fender benders, what's sure to be a 4-hour traffic jam. He moved his head around and raised a brow to Jazz, RC and Bumblebee, the latter 2 shrinking back. And of particular note, numerous reports of 3 colorful cars speeding around the freeway like it's the Indy 500. RC and B visibly winced as Fowler snapped his head back to Optimus. And on top of all that, we've now got a pile of metal bodies piled up in our base. I can only guess this leads up to one big heap of bad news, right? Optimus could tell how frustrated Fowler truly was, but at the same time, he needed to come at this with a level-headed approach. I understand your frustration, Agent Fowler, but we have the situation under control, I can assure you. Fowler sighed and put a hand to his forehead, taking a moment to collect himself before going on. They're already here, aren't they? If you were referring to the Decepticons, I fear that is indeed the case. Prime affirmed with a shake of his head. I only wish this planet had remained undiscovered for some time longer. That begs the question, how did they even find us so soon? Nezu piped up. All Might told me that he had destroyed Shatter and Dropkick's transmitter before it could send any signal. All Might balled his right fist up proudly. Caught it just as it was at 97%. It was then that Red Alert stepped in. Well, considering how soon that they managed to arrive here, I would say that this group of Decepticons, whoever they may be, might have been lingering near your solar system already, the medic explained. And if they have a ship, they may have been able to lock onto Shatter and Dropkick's signals using their long-range scanners. Fowler furrowed his brow and grumbled a bit. Ah, great. So we might be dealing with cons that have a spaceship. Maybe it's time that the Pentagon get informed about all this. Hear me, Agent Fowler. Prime beseeched as he raised his hand. We are your best option in terms of countering the Decepticon threat. Bringing in more humans on a large scale would only result in tragedy, and I am not willing to take that risk. That's very commendable of you, Prime, and it's something that I respect. Fowler placed a hand to his chest as he went on. But as a representative of the government, I have to at least let them know of the incoming threat. I'll hold back on the big guns for now, but the last thing I want to see anymore are stunts like what happened this afternoon happening again. He raised a single brow to the Autobot commander. Think you and your people can do that? We can, and we will. Optimus nodded back. This, I vow. And I'll hold you to that. Fowler straightened his jacket and followed up with a question. So, any ideas on who these cons could be? Bulkhead gave a shrug. Not too sure. All we got are some Viacon drones so far. Could literally be anyone calling the shots. Sideswipe gave a laugh and came in with his own theory. Huh. Yeah, besides, I doubt old Buckethead cares this much about this edge of the galaxy. If any cons are this far out here, it might just be one of the lower-ranked lieutenants that he doesn't give a scrap about. He brought up his fingers and began guessing. I mean, it could be Skytread, it could be Battletrap, heck, it could be freaking SPINISTER, for all we know. These cons could give us no problems whatso. Ahem. The warrior was cut off when Momo cleared her throat, bringing everyone's attention to her. Actually, we did manage to hear one of the Viacons say a name. This news certainly took almost everyone by surprise, including the Autobots. Really? Well, that's great. Windblade smiled. So, who are we dealing with, Momo? Well, I think the Viacon said that his commander's name was Starscream. The moment that name slipped from Momo's lips, however, she and every human there saw the Autobots all visibly deflate, their moods doing a complete 180 as their faces were overcome by grim expressions. Guys. Sideswipe threw his arms up into the air and began walking up. Well, Earth was nice while it lasted. This is bad. Strongarm's hand went up to her helm as she tried to comprehend this news. Please tell me this isn't happening. Fowler quickly raised his hands and tried to get control, as well as some answers. Whoa, hold the phone. Just how bad are we talking here? And who is this, Starscream, guy? Optimus shook his head solemnly. Agent Fowler, this could only be described as very bad. Starscream is a notorious individual in the Decepticon ranks. He is none other than their air commander, leader of the Seeker Army, and Megatron's own second-in-command. Chapter 6. New Villains. So, just to be clear, how boned are we? Kyoka's question posed a valid concern amongst the group of Autobots and humans, all of them still reeling from the revelation that the Decepticons' second-in-command was coming to Earth even as they speak. After a minor freak-out from the students, which the adults managed to get back under control, their next course of action was to find out just what they were in for, and Kyoka's question was close enough to that to count. Well, that all depends. Sideswipe spoke up. What does boned mean? The earphone jack user facepalmed as the other humans all groaned at the question. It means how screwed are we? Ya know, doomed, toast, up shit creek without a paddle. Ah, okay, that makes a lot more sense. Sunstreaker nodded. Aside from that last one. We are not doomed yet, Kyoka. Optimus assured. While the Decepticons coming to Earth with Starscream leading them is disconcerting, we should still be thankful that the Viacons made no mention of Megatron. He craned his head down to the teens as he went on. But more to the point, Starscream is still a very dangerous individual. After all, there is a reason he was appointed leader of the Seekers and second in command. His reputation is one of the worst on Cybertron. Windblade continued, right up there with the other big four Decepticons. Izuku and the other teens were all visibly worried at what she said. The big four. Jazz gave them a nod. Yep, there's Starscream, Megatron himself, and then Soundwave and Shockwave, the other two highest-ranking Decepticon officers. Bulkhead clenched a fist with his brow furrowed. Those four are universally feared across Cybertron, with all of them leading some of the biggest battles in the war's history. However, he broke out into a smirk soon after. Hey, though to be fair, Screamer's a lot less feared than the other three. He may be dangerous, but he's a bit of a perfectionist that gets very emotional if things don't go his way. Ipso facto, he whines when he doesn't get what he wants. RC said smugly. The teens got a small laugh out of that before Optimus re-entered the conversation. But make no mistake, while Starscream is very flawed, he is still not an enemy to take lightly. Should he show himself down here, you children are not to be within his line of sight at all. Is that understood? Tenya saluted immediately. Of course, Optimus Prime. After today, we wouldn't dream of intentionally putting ourselves in the line of fire. Eijiro and Denki both gave thumbs up. Yeah, you bet. The spiky redhead agreed. If Starscream shows up, we'll make sure to let you guys handle him. While we watch you beat the tar out of him from the sidelines. Mina said as she punched the air, causing some of the Autobots to laugh as well. Ochako tapped her fingers together sheepishly. So, now what? What's wrong, Ochako? Strongarm asked. Well, it's just that in all this excitement, we missed our trains back home, so. Oh no, I was supposed to be home by now. Mina said as she scrambled for her cell phone. Please don't be mad, please don't be mad. As if on cue, Eijiro, Denki and Tenya all began pulling out their cell phones as well, and before anyone knew it, they began vigorously typing away on them in a panic. This left the Autobots to stare on in confusion while Izuku, Kyoka, Momo, Mei and the adults watched from the sidelines. Okay, I'm lost. Sideswiped admitted. What's everyone so worried about? Oh, they're just contacting their parents. All Might explained. After all, it's always best to keep them informed of their safety at all times. Optimus put a finger to his chin, pondering on that. Yes, of course. Organic beings do tend to live in family groups. I hadn't considered that. His optics trailed down to Agent Fowler once more before kneeling down to his level. Agent Fowler, in light of the information regarding Starscream, I would appreciate if you would keep us informed of any strange happenings going on anywhere in the world. He shook his head to drive his point home. One never knows where a Decepticon attack could happen, especially if it's being led by Starscream. Understood, Prime. Fowler nodded back. But remember, no matter what happens, it's important that we keep it all covert. I ain't about to have you fightin' some con on a highway in the middle of the day. Don't worry, Agent F. Jazz grinned. We're professionals. It won't happen again, I can promise ya that. We'll see. Fowler hummed. The special agent set his attention over to Aizawa and Nezu, giving the two UA teachers a nod. Eraserhead, Mr. Nezu, if you both are ready, I'll bring you both back to the school. Nezu returned the gesture with a grin. Of course, William, we'd appreciate that. However, Aizawa raised his one good hand. If I may, I want to have a little chat with my students first. He walked over to the group of teenagers, who were now off their phones. So, I assume you all got in touch with your parents. Yep, and we told them that we were just hanging out with friends after school. Denki said with a swipe of his hand. No mention of giant robots or any sort of highway chases. Good, now I want to make something perfectly clear, especially to the five of you. Aizawa's gaze narrowed toward Tenya, Ochako, Eijiro, Denki and Mina, the latter four all flinching in fear. I already said this to the other three, but just because you're all a part of this now, don't think any of you will be receiving any special treatment because of it. You're all still a part of MY class, which means if you break any rules, you'll receive an equal amount of punishment, secret or not. Is that understood? Yes, sir, echoed the terrified voices of the classmates. Tenya, however, was dutiful as always with a salute. Crystal clear, Mr. Aizawa. We will be sure to be on our best behavior, both in class and with the Autobots. Aizawa hummed and gave one last nod. Good. Glad you all understand. I'll see you all tomorrow. Nezu gave the students a wave goodbye as he, Aizawa and Fowler all headed to the helicopter. And remember, make sure you all keep up on your training and your studies. The sports festival is only 2 weeks away, so be sure to give it your all. Momo bowed respectfully toward the three as they departed. We will. Thank you, Principal Nezu. Before long, the helicopter had started back up and was airborne within moments, the rotor blades spinning rapidly as it flew over the Autobot base and off into the distance. Well, I'm very happy we could get all of that settled. All Might said as he placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder. As for me, I must be off. But rest assured that your hero training course tomorrow will be something to look forward to. Izuku smiled back up to him as the number one hero gave a thumbs up to the others. And make sure to not give the Autobots too much trouble, you hear? Loud and clear, All Might, sir. Ochako beamed. We'll be as behaved as we can be. Ha. That's the spirit, All Might said before giving them a farewell salute. See you all in the morning. And remember, when it comes to training, give it a FWOOM. With a mighty pump of his legs, All Might sent himself rocketing up into the sky, all while belting out at the top of his lungs, plus ultra. As the symbol of peace flew off into the afternoon sky, the remaining Autobots and teenagers all stood in silence for a moment before Red Alert stepped forward. Well, now that that's been dealt with, I think it's time to crack down on finishing the base's defenses. He craned his head up to his leader. Optimus, has the signal scrambler been prepped? Indeed, Red Alert. Optimus pointed to the trailer that was hanging out near the side of the building. The technicians at Sector 7 set it up and I retrieved it from their headquarters just this morning. Ah, thank you. Red Alert stepped over to the trailer and opened its doors, pulling out a rather large device that was somewhat rounded with a red, glowing part in the middle. I'll admit, not bad for human technology. However, much to his surprise, May somehow managed to pop up over his shoulder, her eyes wide with intrigue as she stared at the device. Ooh, a signal scrambler. Gah! Red Alert jumped, almost dropping the scrambler in the process. He sighed before sneering slightly at the Pinkett in annoyance. Do not do that, ever again. Ah, come on, ya can't just expect me to not be interested in technology. May said as she crawled up and sat on Red Alert's shoulder. Especially when it's something this advanced. I don't think anything like this is even on the standard hero market. She zoomed in on the scrambler device with her quirk, her interest growing by the minute. This baby just screams, secret government tech. I'm guessing it does exactly what it's supposed to. Yes, it does, supposedly. Red Alert said as he slung the device under his left arm, leaving his right hand free. When I set it up, it'll help keep our location even more hidden by scrambling any communications that go to and from the base. That way, the Decepticons won't be able to detect them and trace them back to us. May whipped her head around to Red, giving him a big grin. Sweet. Want me to help ya set it up? Without warning, Red Alert picked May up off his shoulder, setting her down near his feet. No, I am perfectly capable of setting it up myself, thank you. He turned around and began heading back into the base. I suggest that you all think about heading back home. We're going to be very busy all night getting the base's security finalized. As the medic walked away, Mina pouted and furrowed her brow toward him. Wow, just how much of a jerk can ya be? Yeah, but that's pretty much how Red is most of the time. Sunstreaker shrugged. They guys got a rod up his crankshaft like ya wouldn't believe. I heard that. Red Alert barked, making Sunstreaker flinch. Izuku sighed and slumped his shoulders. Well, as much as I hate to admit it, I do think we should probably get going. What? Mina zipped right over to Izuku and grasped him by the shoulders, getting right up in his face. Midoriya, what are you talking about? We are living out one of my biggest dreams in the middle of Botswana and you're saying we need to go home. Kyoko was about to intervene, but much to her surprise, Izuku gently, if shakily, reached up and took Mina's hands off of him. Ishido, I can understand where you're coming from, really. And I get that you're excited, but Red Alert has a point. We can't just be wandering around the base and getting underfoot when there's work they need to do. He offered her a sympathetic grin and a shrug. But hey, there's still always tomorrow, then we can have the whole afternoon to hang out here. Mina hummed in thought, considering Izuku's words before returning the smile. Yeah, I guess you're right, Midoriya. Yeah, Eijiro pumped an eager fist. And maybe then we can get down to some serious training. Sideswipe gave him 2 thumbs up. You know it, dude. We're gonna make sure you guys go hard at it, so be ready. Indeed, Optimus agreed. But for now, I believe it's time we send you all home. And to make things easier and to ensure your safety, each of you will have an escort. He set his optics over to Bulkhead first. Bulkhead, you will accompany Mina to her home. That earned a joyous laugh from Mina. Oh ho, yes, I am so there. And be sure to maintain covert surveillance in vehicle mode. Bulkhead nodded at Prime's order. Curbside duty, got it. He knelt down to Mina and asked, you ready for this? Heck yeah. At Mina's approval, Bulkhead quickly converted into his Hummer H2 pickup truck mode, and instantly, the pink girl's yellow eyes widened in awe. Oh my god, your alt mode is freaking sweet. Glad you think so. Bulkhead pulled around her and opened his passenger side door. Now, hop in and give me some directions. Pretty sure I have a built-in GPS somewhere. Mina laughed and climbed into the passenger seat, only to see that the driver's seat was still empty. She was about to speak up, but Bulkhead beat her to the punch. Yeah, I know. I'm still working on my holoform. Prime then went to the twins next. Sideswipe, Sunstreaker, you will be taking Eijiro and Denki respectively. Can do, Prime. Sunstreaker replied before shifting into his own vehicle mode, which Sideswipe followed suit with soon after. And, as soon as they converted, Eijiro and Denki were both left slack-jawed at the near-identical Lamborghini Countachas before them. Sunstreaker decided to take the moment in stride. Guys, close your oral cavities. Hey, yeah, ya never know what could lay eggs in there. Sideswipe snarked. Eijiro's hand went up and slapped his own cheek, which he then did the same for Denki. Sorry. Gah, dude, the heck. Denki leered at his friend while rubbing his cheek. Whatever, we're riding home in sentient sports cars. This is too awesome. As the duo climbed into the twins, Prime's optics shifted over to the police cadet. And finally, Strongarm, you will escort Tenya and Ochako home. Of course, Optimus. Strongarm saluted before eyeing the aforementioned humans. But I think a more appropriate term would be WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. Within seconds, Strongarm had transformed into her Jeep Gladiator police truck mode, the light bar on top already flashing red and blue. A police escort. Ochako gasped and pumped her arms up and down excitedly. I always wanted to ride in a police car. This will be so cool. Tenya bowed politely to Strongarm with a hand on his chest. We are very grateful to you for bringing us home, Strongarm, thank you. Think nothing of it, and besides, it gives me the opportunity to test out this lady. Without warning, a green light began flashing in Strongarm's driver's side seat, and before long, a new figure could be seen sitting in it. The door opened and a young woman dressed in a blue police uniform stepped out, complete with a black tie and a blue and black police cap with a gold badge on it. Her skin tone had a deep tan to it and her hair was short and dark, her blue eyes sticking out prominently. Though what had to be the most notable part about her was her overall strong, athletic build, though if the stunned expressions on all the humans were anything to go by, it was clear that they all liked it. The new Holofrom gave a salute as she looked down to her 2 charges. Cadet Stella Armstrong, at your service. Ochako squealed in delight. Strongarm, you look so cool. That is you, correct? Tenya asked. I'm still uncertain with how these holoforms work. Well, I'd be happy to give you an explanation, Stella said before snapping her fingers and making all of her doors open. On the way home, climb in, guys. With that, Ochako and Tenya climbed in and the Autobots all started their engines, prompting Prime to crane his head over to RC and Bumblebee. I'm sure I don't have to tell you two who you are taking. HM, nope, we know the drill. RC affirmed before she and B transformed into their vehicle modes, along with their own holoforms appearing as well. Come on guys, let's get you all back home. Of course, RC, we'll be right there. Momo assured before giving a quick wave up to Windblade. We're still on for our training tomorrow, right Windblade? Yes, so be ready. Windblade knelt down and pointed to the raven-haired girl. I want to make sure I see your creative side and what you can come up with, alright? Momo raised a fist with a determined nod. Right, I'll see you then. Kyoka put a hand to her hip and winked up to Jazz with a thumbs up. And Jazz, hope you haven't forgotten our jam session. Ha, you foe, real. Jazz lowered a fist and bumped it against Kyoka's. I ain't skipping out on ya, if that's what you're thinking. Be ready to make some noise tomorrow, girl. As everyone was saying their goodbyes, though, Izuku gasped and whipped his head up toward Optimus. Wait, Optimus, wasn't there something you wanted to talk to me about with my training? However, Prime simply gave him a wave. Don't worry about it now, Izuku. We will discuss it tomorrow, I promise. For now, return home and get some rest. Believe me, you're all going to need as much as possible for the next 2 weeks to come. Alright, sounds good. Izuku smiled, though a part of his brain couldn't help but stick to that point. Why would Prime want to talk to ME specifically about my training? Patience, Izuku, you'll find out later. As he was about to enter Bumblebee though, he felt Kyoka's arm rub against his, the two almost about to climb in at the same time. The two gasped before Izuku lowered his head politely. Oh, sorry Kyoka, please go ahead. Nah, it's alright. Kyoka waved off with a blush. You were totally about to head in first, you. Please, I insist, Izuku asserted, holding the door open while gesturing inside. Ladies first, after all. Kyoka blinked in surprise before grinning to the greenette, giving him a pat on the arm as she climbed in. Such a gentleman. That compliment left Izuku with the brightest blush and one of the goofiest smiles ever. He had to practically restrain his face as he climbed in, though unfortunately for him, Momo and Mei had taken notice. The raven-haired girl in particular was wearing a sly smirk at the scene. Okay, something has to be done about all this. Indeed. Mei agreed. About what again, exactly? Momo deadpanned and slapped her forehead as Sadie rolled her eyes. Yeah, this is gonna be interesting. Alright guys, let's roll out. With that, all of the Autobots took their human charges back on the road to take them home, leaving Optimus, Windblade and Jazz outside to ponder on everything that happened this afternoon. So, how are we going to deal with Starscream? Windblade inquired. Jazz scoffed at that. Hey, I'm honestly more worried about the cons he's gonna bring with him. You know Megatron must have loaded him up with some good soldiers. Optimus moved his sights skyward. Yes, that thought is disconcerting, he narrowed his optics and sighed. We can only hope that we have sufficient enough numbers and firepower to handle them. The next day, high above the Earth's atmosphere, within the dark recesses of space, there wasn't much to see besides the odd satellites sent up into the planet's orbit, or the moon that revolved around it. The blue sphere floating in the immense mass of space was relatively small in comparison to other planets, even ones in its own solar system, yet somehow, this of all places was where the Autobots had wound up, after all these solar cycles of hiding. This is what a certain tall, dark, winged figure had thought to himself as he walked onto the bridge of his ship, the dark side, as it drew ever closer to the Earth. As he approached the large window pane that gave them a clear view of the planet, he stepped into the light, revealing his appearance in full. He was a primarily light gray bot with several red and blue parts strewn across his body, including red pectorals and waist armor, along with blue armor plating on his forearms and feet. He also had two blue tail fin-like structures on his ankles as well as a pair of tall, red air intakes that were propped up on either shoulder near his head. His pointed wings had red and white stripes painted along their edges and there was even some blue paint on his shins. And to top things off, the cockpit of his vehicle mode could be seen in the center of his chest, with two black fans in the center of his pecs. The bot's helm was angular in shape and painted black, his face painted a sterling silver with a pointed chin. He also literally wore his weapons on his sleeve as two long guns were mounted on either shoulder, the tips ending right above his hands. "So, this is where you have been hiding," the mech whispered in a sinister voice. It would seem that following Shatter and Dropkick's life signatures here wasn't a fruitless endeavor after all. HMPH, real shame that they had to bite the dust before we got here. Another voice, this one deeper and more gravelly, piped up from behind. Still standing in the shadows was a far shorter mech, his red eyes shining through the darkness. "I told ya we should have gone to hyperspeed, Starscream." Starscream's lips curled into a snarl as he spun around to his subordinate. "And I told YOU that it would have been a waste of energon, Barricade." A scoff came from the shorter bot as he stepped into the light. He came up to Starscream's midsection and sported a primarily black color scheme, with a light lavender serving as his secondary on his thighs, upper arms, hands and midsection. The front of his vehicle mode was his chest and the doors formed a pair of wings, which had white paint on them along with some Cybertronian writing. His front tires were on the back of his shoulders while the rear ones were on his ankles, and a pair of silver guns were attached near either side of his head. His black helm was rounded near the top but had an angular chin, with a forehead crest that had dark purple chevron wings sticking out either side on his forehead. His face was a deep gold color, which helped it stick out. Barricade narrowed his optics back at Starscream and crossed his arms. "Hey, considering we're over a planet that's bound to have energon on it, I don't exactly see an issue with splurging a bit if it meant getting some of our best operatives out of there safely." "Oh please." Starscream waved off the security officer. Shatter and Dropkick were dedicated Decepticons who knew the costs that came with their position. In any case, even if we had used the hyperdrive, I doubt it would have mattered. Really. And it had nothing to do with the fact that they had a transmitter on them that could send a signal to Cybertron to contact Lord Megatron and instantly send an army here, would it? Barricade asked skeptically. Starscream rolled his optics at that. "Oh please, I could contact Lord Megatron on this computer at any time." He gestured to a nearby console to emphasize his point. "Besides, it's not like it's our fault that they chose to not travel with an attack ship, otherwise they would have been able to do the same. They actively chose to make things harder for themselves." "Hey, yeah, right. Just keep telling yourself that, Screamer." The two mechs perked their heads up at the arrival of a feminine voice, one that carried with it a lot of confidence and was dripping in sarcasm. Entering the room was a female Decepticon with a dark green color scheme, with some tan details throughout, mainly on the chest where her blue cockpit was. Her legs were made up of the back of her alt mode, which was made apparent by the back rotors in her ankles. She also had orange painted forearms and feet, along with some on her waist as well, which matched the four rotors that hung down from her back. Her helm was somewhat bullet-shaped and had an orange head crest and V-shaped headpiece settled on her forehead, and her eyes gleaming a bright yellow as her black lips turned up into a smirk. After all, making excuses is what you're good at. Barricade couldn't help but smile as the femme came sauntering in. "Swift, glad you could join the party." "Ah, yes, indeed." Starscream rolled his eyes. "Just what I needed, more sass." "Hey, don't blame me just because you're easy to make fun of." Swift countered with a laugh. "Seriously, it's not that hard." Starscream growled and reared his shaking fist back in a threatening manner, though Swift seemed to be nonplussed by the action. "Oh, what, you gonna take your aggression out on a femme?" At that moment, her hands began to light up with glowing green power, which lit up her face as her smirk increased. "Because I'm game." Goo, ow." Starscream stomped away in frustration. "Whatever, it matters not." His manic grin returned as he stepped back toward the window pane, his optics trained toward the earth. "The point is, we have made it to where the Autobots are hiding, and now is the perfect opportunity to strike. Contact the Viacons and tell them to keep pursuing the Autobots with utmost prejudice." Barricade coughed into his hand and muttered, yeah, about that." Starscream slowly turned around, giving his subordinate a disapproving and irritated glare. "We've recently just lost all 6 Viacon signals." "What?" It's the truth, Commander Starscream." The Decepticon's second-in-command whirled around to another Viacon, one of the many who were manning all of the consoles on the bridge. "We lost them about a mega-cycle ago and, pew pew pew." Yeah. An intense violet-colored blast struck the Viacon square in the chest, nullifying all of his systems and making him crash to the floor, unconscious. One of Starscream's null rays smoked as he grumbled, all while Swift crossed her arms and rolled her optics. Oh hey, a rare moment of restraint. Ya didn't kill one of them this time. We lose more soldiers that way. Barricade deadpanned. Silence. Starscream bellowed before pointing to Barricade again. Do we have visuals from their optics? Of course, I was just about to bring them up. Barricade walked over to another console at the very end of the bridge and pressed a button, bringing up several different screens that showed the Viacon's point of views, revealing which Autobots ended them in the first place. From this, we can confirm that RC, Windblade, Jazz, and B-127 are on the planet. Starscream and Swift were both taken aback by the little yellow bot's presence, to say the least. B-127. The scout. I gave Redwing an exact order to pursue and offline him eons ago. Swift's smirk returned as she crossed her arms. And would ya look at how that turned out? She received a sneer from the air commander, who at this point was visibly quaking. Hey, I'm just saying if you're gonna send a con to make a hit, send one that can get the job done right. Ah, fantastic. Starscream pinched the bridge of his nose before noticing something odd. He set his sights onto one of the screens and pointed at it. Enlarge that one, right there. Barricade executed the order and now the one Viacon's point of view took up the entire screen, which now showed it chasing down 9 young humans. Those must be the organics they said the Autobots were with. The three continued to watch until the Viacon picked up 2 females, one that had bright pink skin and horns on her head. And then, much to the trio's surprise, the girl screamed and raised her hands up to the Viacon's face, blasting it with corrosive acid that took out one of its optics. Whoa, what was that? Swift asked. Where did that acid come from? Barricade added. Z Fraulian's hands, that's there. Everyone in the room all spun around and saw 2 more Decepticons enter, one that was about Swift's height while the other was utterly massive. They were both cast in shadow but had red glowing parts on them that made them visible, even in the darkness. Very interesting, to be sure. The shorter Decepticon stepped forward, revealing himself to be a primarily black bot with red detailing on the center of his chest and top of his helm. He also had red plating on the sides of his lower legs and around the lights that were on his shoulders, along with 2 red pointed pieces near his collar. The front wheels of his alt mode were in his shoulders while the back ones were inside his calves, while the front of his alt mode formed his chest. He had 2 small guns sticking up from his backpack while a long, black piece of vinyl hung down from his waist, resembling a sort of lab coat. His helm was also quite pointy with air intakes on either side, while his face was covered by a guard that came in 2 parts, a plate that covered his mouth and a part that resembled a chin, both connected by 2 pieces of red metal. The other, bigger Decepticon was primarily green with rectangular shoulders and big arms with 2 black gun implements on them. The backs of his hands were green while his fingers were painted blue, and a pair of large cannon barrels stuck up out of his back. His chest piece and waist armor were blue as well, which managed to create the illusion of a face in his torso thanks to the 2 large yellow lights in his pectorals that looked like eyes and a smaller set of lights that resembled nostrils. His legs were black and had green kneecaps, with treads all wrapped up in his calves. His helm was mainly green with a curved, blue chevron on his forehead. Looking at the larger Khan's face though, he seemed to be entertained as he watched the Viacon on screen get lifted up into the air thanks to the brown-haired girl simply touching him. Bahahaha. He laughed in a deep, booming voice, accompanied by a heavy Russian accent. Viacon is being played for fool by Itsy Bitsy Organics. Indeed, mein Freund. The shorter Khan concurred in a German accent, tapping his chin with a sharp finger. Quite the curious case, to be sure. It would seem that the inhabitants of this planet have extraordinary abilities that far exceed any expectations regarding organic species. Starscream paused the footage and glanced back to welcome the 2. Ah, Flatline. So good of you to join us, Doctor. His optics shifted up to the larger Decepticon in trepidation. Ah, and I see you have brought your dim bodyguard as well. The big Decepticon was quick to take offense to that as he bent down to meet Starscream face to face. What you say, tiny screamer? You insult Blastwave. He slammed his fist into his huge palm. Because if you did, Blastwave will promise you much pain and deep hurting. Blastwave, please, no need to start a scene. Flatline pressed a hand to his comrade's shoulder, pushing him away from Starscream. Though that didn't stop him from glaring at the second in command either. After all, Z's is not J place for insults or threats, correct? Starscream placed a hand over his chest with a slight smirk. Ahem, yes, of course. Please forgive me, but it has been a stressful decacycle, he heard Blastwave grumble as he backed off before going back to flatline. In any case, my good doctor, while the powers of these organics are unexpected, I doubt that they are of any threat to us. After all, they are but weak flesh creatures at the end of the day. Flatline narrowed his optics in thought. You think so, Barricade, proceed with Z footage. The officer shrugged and let the Viacon footage continue, where they all bore witness to a child with engines in his legs speeding under the Viacon with another girl on his back. She appeared to have extendable earlobes with metal pieces on their tips which struck the Viacon in his knee joints, bringing him down so that two other human males could continue the onslaught. And then, everyone's jaws dropped as they watched one boy mercilessly punch away the rest of the Viacon's faceplate before the other shocked its head so much that it blew up, finally cutting off the footage. There was a long, drawn-out silence before Barricade muttered, "Holy frag. Primus, those kids are ruthless," Swift said before her smile returned. "I kinda like it. This is impossible." Starscream threw his hands up into the air. "Organics are inferior compared to us. We are made of metal. How could they possibly be able to defeat our kind?" Blastwave guffawed some more and pointed to Starscream. "Ha ha ha. Starscream whines like little baby. He refuses to admit that itsy-bitsy humans have power enough to fall Viacon. While I will say that Jings could have been different if one of us had been Zier, Blastwave has a point, Starscream." Flatline concurred. "Even you must admit that Z's children have accomplished something truly astonishing." He stepped up to another console and began typing in commands. "Perhaps it would be prudent to investigate Z planet before they think of setting foot down Zier." Starscream grit his teeth and made for the panel himself. "Now wait just a moment, I am the leader of this mission, so what gives you the right to?" Starscream. Everyone froze and spun around toward the bridge entrance, where two tall figures were standing. Both of them were about Starscream's height and were obscured by shadows, at least partially. Their lower halves could be seen in the light, and while one was clearly defined, the other wasn't so. The one who spoke seemed to be a primarily black bot with purple and silver detailing on his legs, particularly on his feet, which were entirely purple. His red visor shined in the shadows, and it was vaguely shaped like a pair of shades. His silhouette also suggested he had a large wing on his back painted in silver, though other than that, not much else of him could be seen. He also had a low voice that resonated throughout the ship. "You're the Colorado leader of this mission. And didn't you forget that?" Starscream rolled his eyes and grumbled. "Ah, General Unicronus, so glad you could finally join us. I assume that you and Makeshift saw the whole thing." "We did," the undefined bot on the right said. He was vaguely humanoid in shape, but otherwise, his body seemed to be constantly shifting. One second, he was more angular, the next, he was smooth, and then a second later, he was pointy. The only part that could be made out clearly were his eyes, which gleamed yellow. "And I must say, it's unexpected." Unicronus craned his head over to Flatline and nodded to him. "Flatline, launch the probe. This planet's in need of proper examination." Flatline gave a polite bow while also giving an amused chortle. "HM, you are speaking my language, Herr General." The shadowy Decepticon nodded before giving an order to one of the Viacons. "Bring the dark side around to the moon and land there. Stay on the dark side so that the planet doesn't detect us." He pointed to another Viacon and ordered, "And get Lord Megatron on the horn right now. He needs to hear about this." "Now wait just a moment." Starscream rebutted. "Unicronus, this is all completely unnecessary. We can take this planet without URK." Unicronus grabbed Starscream by the collar and brought him up close to his face. "You disrespectin', the main mech, Screamer. Because I can get ya court-martialed for that." Starscream brought his arm up and pointed his null ray at Unicronus' head. "I believe that you're forgetting that I still outrank you, General. And as commander, I care not if you're Megatron's little pet project. I can still." Whoa, boys." Swift got herself between the two and separated them, her hands glowing green again to do so. "Let's not get out of hand here, huh? Megatron put the two of you in charge of this ship for a reason, right? So, instead of being at each other's throats and acting like a couple of protoforms, let's focus on taking down the Autobots first and foremost, huh? What'd you say? Starscream and Unicronus glared at one another before turning away, both clearly aggravated. Fine. They echoed. Z-probe has been launched. Flatline announced. Through the window pane, they watched as the pod containing the probe was fired off toward the Earth, entering its atmosphere within a few cycles before breaking off and launching the pod from there. Before long, it found the nearest city and immediately, the Decepticons could see some action going down in its streets. Was East DOS. Flatline's reaction was justified as they all saw a gigantic muck monster attacking the city, its hide made of dirt and scum with a giant maw going way down past his head. At the same time, it was being attacked by a man in a blue, armored suit with several parts of him that were on fire, including most of his face. He seemed to have a permanent scowl etched on his features, even as he blasted a pillar of fire at the muck monster, making it crash into a building. From there, several more spandex-wearing organics joined in, including a female in a cream and purple bodysuit who was just as big as the muck monster. She gave it a hard punch and sent it falling down, which just so happened to send it crashing right into the probe, crushing it effortlessly. What kinda world did we find? Barricade asked. Blastwave will be honest, he was not expecting to see that. The largest Decepticon admitted. Unicronus scratched his chin. Yeah, neither was I. Looks like we might have come across a pretty interesting planet. But before the conversation could continue, one of the Viacons piped up. General Unicronus, we've established a stable connection with Cybertron. They are requesting to be put through. Good, everyone, look sharp. Unicronus and Starscream took center stage as the others gathered around, preparing themselves for who they were about to be met with on the screen. The holographic display flickered a bit before showing an image of a dimly lit room, in which stood two rather intimidating figures who could barely be seen. Or more accurately, one standing figure and one sitting in a large throne in the center of the screen. The bot to the right of the throne didn't have two optics, only a single yellow one in the center of his head with seemingly no mouth to speak of. He also appeared to have a laser weapon on his left wrist instead of a hand, with a hose attached to his arm that connected to his backpack. Sitting in the throne, meanwhile, was a large mech who had a bucket-shaped helmet and a scowl that could make that flame hero jealous. He appeared to be pretty strongly built, with broad shoulders and an angular barrel chest. And what's more, on his right arm was a massive cannon, one that no doubt struck fear into the sparks of many a Cybertronian. He narrowed his eyes at the crew of Decepticons through the screen and spoke in a low, metallic voice. Starscream, Unicronus, report. The Decepticons all bowed in respect to their leader before Starscream spoke up. Lord Megatron, it pleases me to inform you that we have successfully located a group of renegade Autobots on a small, organic planet. One that is in a solar system far from Cybertron. I can see that, Megatron said as he rose from his throne, stepping into the light while the other bots stood back. His details fully revealed, Megatron was a metallic gray Decepticon with some red strewn about on his midsection and his elbow joints, with black armor on his waist, legs and backpack. Said legs and backpack also had treads in them, which was a dead giveaway for his alt mode. He also had a pointed brow above his optics, seemingly giving him a permanent glare. I have your coordinates up on my display here, and if I am not mistaken, it is a planet that we have observed before. Shockwave. Indeed, my lord. The bot with the single optic spoke up, revealing himself to be a mostly purple mech with a hexagonal-shaped head that had two lighter purple fins on either side of it. This is the exact same planet that I gained inspiration from when rebuilding the Lightning Strike Coalition force with their new alternate forms. Starscream shuddered as the memory returned to him. Don't remind me of those beasts. They caused enough trouble for us in the Sea of Rust. Unicronus typed in a command, bringing up the footage that the probe had sent them. As you can see, my lord, this planet isn't home to beasts like that anymore. Instead, it looks like a bunch of superpowered organic beings inhabit the planet, and for some reason, they're in conflict with one another. Interesting, Megatron murmured as he watched the footage, a nefarious smirk making its way to his metal lips. Perhaps this could be something we can take advantage of. Exactly what I was thinking. Unicronus agreed as he typed in another command, bringing up the Viacon footage. Though that said, I also think we should take things carefully, too. A few younglings managed to work together to bring down one of our troops using their powers, and let me tell ya, they were ruthless. What? Megatron slammed his fist against the console he was at, causing his image to become staticky for a moment. You cannot be, but once he saw the footage for himself, it only confirmed what his general was saying, causing him to sneer in disgust. Mere organic beings, destroying a Cybertronian. And in such a cruel manner as well. Shockwave pointed out, though he also raised his hand. But if I may be so bold, my master, these younglings only took down a single Viacon. Logically, if any of our superior troops were to be sent down, I'm certain the outcome would be different. Would it, Shockwave? Megatron asked with narrowed optics. Because if mere children with these abilities could take down a single Viacon, who is to say that any of the more experienced warriors of this planet would not hesitate to fight against us? Especially if the Autobots have made allies with them. Megatron balled his fist and narrowed his optics. We must approach this situation with caution, otherwise the Autobots will have a whole planet of super-powered beings against us. Ones whose full capabilities are still unknown to us. Vel Zen, what do suggest they do, Lord Megatron? Flatline asked. Megatron sighed and balled his fists. As much as it detests me to say this, Doctor, I would say the next course of action is for you all take on disguises to hide yourselves from the human eye. He pointed right to them through the screen. It is imperative that we keep our existence a secret from the humans until we know exactly what the extent of their powers can be, so until then, keep yourselves hidden and be sure to study exactly what they are capable of. Almost immediately after hearing this, though, Starscream was quick to protest. What? Lord Megatron, surely you cannot be serious. These organic creatures are nothing to us. Crushing them under our heels would be as simple as... Silence. Megatron bellowed, shutting Starscream up without even trying. Starscream, it is that exact mindset that has led so many a Decepticon to their doom in the past. To underestimate one's enemy can lead to a devastating defeat. So, until I say otherwise, you are to remain robots in disguise. The Decepticon leader leaned closer to the screen to make sure his point came across. Am I clear? Starscream grit his metal teeth in annoyance, but listened to Megatron nonetheless. Yes, my liege. Excellent. Megatron nodded before shifting his attention toward Unicronus. In general, I'm sure I do not have to remind you of your position. Unicronus placed a hand over his chest and bowed to Megatron. Of course, Lord Megatron. Stay out of sight of any Autobot and stay behind the scenes as a tactical coordinator, as always. However, Megatron couldn't help but hear the bitterness in his general's voice at that last part. Patience, Unicronus. Soon, the time will come for you to enter the fray, and once you do, his smirk increased at what he said next. The Autobots will be left stunned, confused and betrayed as you enter the battlefield. Hey, you're right, Lord Megatron. Unicronus snickered. As usual. Megatron nodded to him before setting his gaze onto the rest of the Darkseid's crew. Be sure to keep in contact and inform us of what you learn about this superhuman society while on this planet. He clenched his hand into a powerful fist and raised it. For the more we know, the better I will be able to put together a selection of Decepticons to deal with them and the Autobots for our eventual invasion of the planet. Is that understood? Crystal clear, Lord Megatron. Swift said as she, Barricade and the others all gave a salute. We'll keep you posted. Excellent. Oh, and one more thing. He furrowed his metal brow as he made his point clear. If by chance Optimus Prime is on the planet, inform me and leave him for when I arrive. I would like a few words with him. The Decepticons all nodded, to which Megatron hummed approvingly. Good. Megatron, out. And with that, the call ended, leaving all of the Decepticons to sigh in relief. Primus, you just cannot relax with him around. Makeshift commented, even while on call. Swift simply gave a shrug. Well, what'd you expect from Lord Megatron? He's gotta keep up that intimidation factor. She sent a snarky smile toward Starscream. Something that I know you know far too well, right Starscream? Do not test me right now, Swift. Starscream barked with a swipe of his hand. I am not in the mood. He marched right up to the console and pressed another button, bringing up a still image of Earth onto the screen. Bad enough that we cannot engage in an all-out assault on this puny planet, but the fact that we must hide ourselves from its organic inhabitants is another. He slammed his hands on the top of the console, frustration etched across his features. I have no idea why Lord Megatron fears these organics, but, whoa. Blastwave reached down and grabbed the Air Commander by the back of his neck, bringing him up to optic level with a glare. Starscream bite tongue. Lord Megatron fears nothing. The Decepticon bruiser poked Starscream in the chest to drive his point home. Megatron is one who conquered all of Cybertron under Iron Fist. And he make good point, too. Must know one's enemy before finding best way to crush them. Flatline reached up and set a hand on Blastwave's arm. Now mean Froon, I believe Starscream has had enough. Blastwave grumbled and put Starscream down, though Flatline raised an irage at him. Und as for you, Commander, I would suggest we start following Megatron's orders und find some new disguises for ourselves. Well, most of us, anyway. Unicronus pipped up. I ain't in no hurry to leave the ship. And I'll be abstaining from that as well. Makeshift added. Don't need an alt mode when. Yeah, you can transform into anything, we get it. Barricade waved off. The rest of us will gladly head out into the field to pick up the slack. Starscream sighed again and resigned to his fate. Very well. Let us begin this charade, shall we? He pressed a button and gave an order. Computer, launch another probe to begin scanning the local lifeforms, transport vehicles. However, nothing happened, and Starscream's order went unacknowledged. He let out a grumble before pressing the button again, harder this time. Computer, I said launch another. But then, Swift tapped him on the shoulder. Starscream. What? Swift, can't you see that that was our only probe. Swift deadpanned. Starscream's left optic twitched as all of the stress and frustration began building up inside his processor, making it overheat. Whatever. I'll just go down there and scan an alternate form myself. And with that, Starscream stormed out of the ship's main bridge, practically fuming from the air vents on the sides of his helmet as Swift laughed at his expense. Flatline shook his head and groaned as he went to leave the room as well. Well, I will go construct a new probe so that the rest of us can acquire new alternate modes. He ushered Blastwave to follow him, which the large Decepticon dutifully did. Come along, Blastwave. Let us hope that Starscream doesn't jeopardize Z's mission for us. Barricade growled and proceeded toward the door as well. Yeah, now that the doc mentions it, I should probably go with Starscream to make sure he doesn't do that. Barricade, as much as I hate Screamer's guts, even I know he wouldn't do that. Unicronus pointed out. I know, but I just wanna make sure. Barricade set his sights onto Swift with an inviting grin. You come in, Swift. Always room for another. But Swift just gave him a small wave. Nah, but thanks anyway. She jerked her thumb up toward the holoscreen. I wanna sit back and watch the fireworks if Screamer gets himself into hot water. She sent him a little goodbye wink. But hey, if ya see any aircraft down there that'd fit my chassis, let me know, okay? The Decepticon officer chuckled and sent her a salute back. Yeah, you got it. Later. And with that, Barricade left the bridge as well, leaving only Swift, Makeshift and Unicronus behind. It was then that Swift noticed that Unicronus had brought the Vehicons optic footage back up, taking note of the still images of RC, Windblade, Jazz and B-127. Swift pursed her lips and eyed the general in suspicion. Unicronus, you good? Yes, Swift. Unicronus acknowledged, though he didn't tear his optics away from the image. I'm fine. Okay, just thought I'd ask. Swift sauntered up next to the black and purple bot, glancing up toward his face. It's just that I noticed you seem oddly fixated on the Autobots here and, well, considering you. Without warning, Unicronus rounded about on Swift, his blood-red visor locked onto her optics. You think I can't get the job done, Swift? That I might be soft just because of a few familiar faces? He stuck his finger out at her, dangerously close to her line of sight. Because lemme tell ya, the main mech doesn't let anything get in the way of his mission. And that's a fact, ya get it? Okay, geez, I get it. Swift raised her hands up in surrender as she stepped away from Unicronus. Sorry for insinuating anything. Unicronus huffed and went back to the screen, all while Swift stepped up next to Makeshift. Sheesh, what crawled up his crankshaft and died? Perhaps it's best to leave him be for now. Makeshift advised, ushering Swift to follow him to the door. After all, I imagine he is frustrated with Megatron's order to keep staying hidden from the Autobots. As the two left, Unicronus balled his hands into fists, his visor glowing intensely as he glared at the image B-127 in particular. I have no idea how you survived, kid, but when I get my hands on you, you'll wish you had never seen me again. And it's the end of Season 2 Part 3 of this What If. I hope you guys like it. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment down below and subscribe to the channel.